This program is brought to you by cable franchise fees and generous donations from viewers like you.
It is December 20th, 2021, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting is being conducted via remote means. Given that we have a quorum of the council present, I am calling the December 20th, 2021 meeting of the Amherst Town Council to order at 6:30 p.m. I will call upon each councilor by name. At that time, you should unmute your mic and say present. This will indicate that we can hear you and you can hear us. And please remember to mute your mic afterwards. I'm going to skip Shalini for the moment and Alyssa and go to Pat DeAngelis.
Present.
Darcy Dumont.
Here.
Lynn Griesmer is present. Mandy Johanneke.
Present.
Dorothy Pam.
Here.
Evan Ross.
Present.
George Ryan.
Present.
Kathy Shane.
Here.
Steve Schreiber.
Here.
Andy Steinberg.
Present.
Sarah Schwartz.
Present.
Shalini Balmiln.
Present.
And Alyssa Brewer.
Present.
Great. There's no chat room for this meeting. If you have technical issues, please let Athena and me know. To make a comment or ask a question, please use the raised hand function. If technical difficulties arise, since we're using remote participation, I'll decide how to address that at the time. And just make sure you let us know if you have those technical difficulties. And we will make note of that if we have to do anything in the minutes. Okay. We have two announcements I just want to call to people's attention. We will have a special town council meeting preceded by a brief swearing in on January 3rd. Right now, that is planned for the town room and will be connected as a remote as well with Zoom, so that there'll be an opportunity for people to participate either way. We actually encourage you to come via Zoom. Community Resources Committee is holding their public hearing on January 10th, 2022, starting at 6:45, and that is with regard to the temporary moratorium on the permitting and approval of large solar scale ground mount solar photovoltaic installations. Thank you. With that, we are going to move to general public comment. At this point, there are 22 people in the audience. I would like you to raise your hand if you would like to make general public comment. This is the only comment this evening, and I'm going to ask for people to raise their hands now and then take that into account and state the number. So I'm going to wait just a little bit to see if other people would like to make general public comment. Is there anybody else who would like to make general public comment? Right now, I'm only seeing 6 hands. That's what I'm going to assume. Please raise your hand now if you would like to make general public comment. Then I'm going to start with Ira Brick. Please enter the room, state your name, where you live.
Hi, this is Ira Brick. I live at 255 Strong Street. I want to speak to the two issues that you're discussing later today. One being the lot that is commonly known as the CVS lot, but it's actually next to the CVS lot, and we prefer to call it the North Prospect Street lot, a residential zone. I would like to suggest that many people that say we want a garage in town are not specifically citing that site. and that there's two at least other sites that deserve consideration that have a lot going for them and less going against them. And if so, I had written you, but just my idea for the CVS lot would be it needs resurfacing anyway. It's not a reason to build a garage there just because it needs resurfacing, but it does need resurfacing. And I would love the garage to be built elsewhere and that lot to be improved to include charging for e-vehicles, and maybe the solar roof that's over it can actually power those vehicles, and give back free parking for anybody that gets parking validation, parking in that lot from the movies or stores or restaurants, etc. I also want to say on the topic of mixed use, there's been so much discussion about retail is dead and people are buying online, but somebody recently listed all the businesses that are downtown, and I have to say, I'm downtown almost every day. I either have breakfast or lunch, even through the winter, even through COVID. I love downtown. I walk through there. I ride my bike through there. There's a lot of businesses, but this list surprised me how many businesses there are. And the idea that people would not come here to open a store, I think the more retail space there is, the more capacity there is for new businesses, the more it's going to be interesting to other new businesses, and the more people, it's going to start a virtuous cycle of more stores and more businesses. If we cut off the ability to even have those spaces, we are never going to achieve that. I had a cousin who had her entire small intestine removed because it was sick, and nobody seemed to think through. I mean, she won millions of dollars in malpractice, or her widow did. Nobody seemed to think what happens to this person without this vital body part. And it's the same thing here. If we don't have that body part of our downtown, there's not going to be any ability to fulfill the interest that people do have in opening a business here. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Ira. Meg Gage, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hello, everyone. This is Meg Gage. I live at 208 Montague Road in North Amherst. First of all, and most important of what I want to say tonight is to thank all of you for what has been a really hard slog, much harder than I think than anybody realized. And you've all worked. We don't agree, but we have to start to spread the idea that not agreeing on everything isn't a deal breaker. It's not a big deal. We still can work together and collaborate. So I appreciate how hard you've all worked, harder than any of us expected. And you've done it with two gigantic, and on top of starting a new government and creating all new structure, two huge curveballs that you've dealt with really well. One obviously is COVID and changing how you meet, changing how we all interact and how we participate has taken imagination, particularly on the part of the town staff. And secondly, the national reckoning about racial justice has provided an opportunity for Amherst to step up in a really big way. And you've supported an ambitious and hopefully transformative change in our town that I think we'll all feel proud of. It's not, we're just beginning and there's a lot of hard work ahead, but I'm proud of our town, the support you've given to the Community Safety Working Group recommendations. We've responded to this national reckoning with energy, creativity, and passion to do all we can to address racial justice. And I thank you for your leadership and the town staff and the town manager. I especially appreciate Lynn's leadership. I think she shows, again, it's not about whether we agree on every single thing. That's almost a side matter. I feel she's led with mutual respect, warmth, clarity, organization, strategy, and calm. And I really think it would have been a lot even harder without a leader with her skills. So in my last 50 seconds, I can't resist. I want to say a quick word about what I think zoning is. It seems to me when a community wants to build a new facility, there are 4 steps. First is to establish the need. And around this parking garage, there's a lack of agreement about need. Second is, given what the need is that we've established, what's the best solution? Understanding that the word best needs to be translated into location, access, safety, and so on. Third is getting impact on various stakeholders. And finally, fourth is making a zoning change. The zoning bylaw is how a community states what it has decided it wants to do, not what it might want to do. But really, most important is to thank you all, and bravissimo for quite the 3 years that you've been through, and with some curveballs that you've handled really well. So I'm proud of our town and our staff. And our staff is, I could say at another time, amazing town staff in every way. And I love our District 1 counselors, especially Kathy and Sarah. But anyway, over and out.
Thank you, Meg. I'm going to again ask if anybody wants to speak, that they raise their hand now, because I'm basing the 3 minutes on the number of people I see. And Dorothy, I don't know why you have your hand up. Could you take it down?
I wanted to comment on your saying if you don't have your hand up now, you can't speak later. A lot of people were very upset about that last meeting. So that's what I raised my hand for quite a while ago when you first said.
That's why I am making sure people know they need to raise their hand now. I'm aware of that. Okay. Ken Rosenthal, please enter the room and state your name and where you live.
Thank you. I'm Ken Rosenthal. I live on Sunset Avenue, and I have 2 comments to make. The first is I want to express my appreciation to George Ryan, my District 3 counselor, who's serving at his last meeting. It's no secret that George and I often disagree on some issues for the town. We also often agree on them, but in all respects, he's been treating me very generously, and I appreciate his hard work for the town. And so I want to go on record thanking him. The next comment is about the proposed zoning change for the parking garage on North Prospect Street. If you did not know at the beginning of this process months ago, you know now that this is a very divisive issue for the town. And because it is, I think it's not an issue that should be decided tonight, because especially we have years to go before there will be an availability of that space to build a garage. We know, for instance, at least I've been told by a member of the board of the library, that space is going to be used for the staging area for the renovations for the library. And the library has not been designed yet. The drawings are not able to be put out to bid yet. There is no contractor selected yet. The budget hasn't been fully approved yet. And then it will take years, at least a couple, to build the library renovation. So we have plenty of time to do the parking question and the location of a garage right. If it turns out that the evidence demonstrates to all of us that this is the best place in town for a garage, you're going to have the support of a lot of people, including me. But if it turns out that there are better places, I think some of you who believe this is the only place for it will change your mind. So please, counselors, take this opportunity now to defer to the next council, which is going to start in just 2 weeks. Let them start the planning process properly. It can all be done in several months, and you will lose no time at all in getting the garage where people really find it is the best place for it. Thank you again for listening to me. I appreciate having this time.
Thanks for joining us, Ken. Susanna Musprat, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
I'm Susanna Musprat. I live at 38 North Prospect Street. And I would like to also thank you all for your service and your diligence. I also wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate, and a Happy New Year. But I am urging that you defer the vote on these 2 zoning amendments tonight, the mixed-use buildings and the parking garage overlay amendment. I think more and more residents are becoming aware of these proposed amendments thanks to articles in the press. And I know that dozens of people have taken the time at this busy time of year to send you carefully considered comments. The problem is, and I know this because some of them have shared their comments with me, but because there's a time lag between when people submit their comment and when it appears on the website, people in the public don't have an opportunity to read the comments that have been coming in. And especially when you're meeting every week and there isn't time in between meetings for these comments to be transparently made available to the town. And I think that if you really want to encourage full two-way communication with the people of the town, you need to allow time for this process to take place, for the comments to get posted, for people to read them, and then they may respond and also want to write to you. I doubt that even the council members have had enough time to read and carefully consider the comments because of the long meetings and very full agendas that have been coming every Monday. Members of the press are now beginning to question whether proper procedures were followed when no new public hearing was advertised and conducted at the point where the initial proposal to rezone the parcel to BG, this is the parking lot parcel, was replaced by an entirely different proposal to create an overlay district there. It seems that legal opinion on this might differ from the advice the town received from its attorneys. Surely this question should be laid to rest before a vote is taken, lest the parking garage overlay zone itself should stand on a shaky foundation. Thank you very much.
Susanna, thank you for joining us. Pam Rooney, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hi, Pam Rooney, 42 Cottage Street, my last free evening of town council meetings. I look forward to joining you and will recognize, as many people have, that you all have put in a tremendous amount of work to shape a government that works for the people. My comments tonight are about the zoning articles, and I've been very sorry to watch the process by which the district and the overlay district has been discussed. I think a zoning change without looking at the bigger picture is problematic. And so many times we've asked to please pause and look at the big picture, figure out if that is indeed the best site for a parking garage. And if it is, great, we go ahead and we make it very compatible with a very historic residential neighborhood. So those just something that I hope you all consider carefully when you think about your vote. On the mixed use building, I would ask for probably the 100th time that at least the minimum of 40% floor area be non-residential, and that if we do not create enough usable commercial retail space, that we won't have it in the future. And it can be subsidized by the income from the residential apartments above. That 40% was cleanly divided from the common areas, so we don't need to count the common areas, but please don't make it 30%. Please make that clean, non-residential space at least 40% of the floor area. That's it for tonight. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thanks for joining us, Pam. We look forward to seeing you on the 3rd of January. There are four hands up at this point. Is there anybody else who would like to make a public comment? Okay, then I'm going to take these 4 comments. John Sheldon, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hi, thank you. My name is John Sheldon. I'm at 70 Sunset Avenue. I appreciate the opportunity to make these comments. I would like to encourage the council members to support voting a yes for the zoning overlay regarding the potential parking garage on that space. A vote for the zoning overlay does not commit the council to ultimately choosing that site as the final destination for additional parking for Amherst. In order to expeditiously move this process forward and not endlessly talk about it and delay action, which, we need progressive action, a vote for the zoning overlay allows further discussion, allows for an RFP, allows for consideration of other sites as potential options for parking. So in order to support progress for Amherst and progress for the town and the economy of Amherst, a vote for the zoning overlay is moving forward in the right direction. You have to take that into consideration with respect to the loss of parking at the North Commons. I think that's related and a relevant consideration. There is a need for additional parking. Finally, I think there's no reason not to vote on this tonight. I mean, to promote that this be moved forward to January for the next meeting is, I think, insulting to the outgoing council members, George Ryan and Evan Ross. Their lame duck status doesn't somehow allow them to vote on this pertinent issue tonight. I think it's very insulting to those members to move this forward. So I encourage the council to vote yes on this issue tonight. Thank you.
John, thank you for your comments. Janet Keller, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Janet Keller here. I live on Pulpit Hill Road in beautiful North Amherst. And I want to add my voice to thanks for the incredible amount of work and hard work that you all have done under difficult circumstances. And a special shout out to Alyssa Brewer for the clarity that she has brought to us these many years. Much appreciated. So here's why I wrote to the council asking you to send the mixed-use building zoning amendment to the planning department for some more work. Retail, restaurants, arts, entertainment, and services. These are the goods that bring people downtown. These are the goods and services that the bid and the town government are advertising on their websites, and that thousands of citizens asked for in mixed buildings this year. But that won't happen if you don't require them and make them specific. Preferably 60%, but at least 40% of the public-facing first floor space, the minimum in surrounding towns, rather than the very vague most in the amendment. And not on the upper floors where it will not be seen to attract customers. I also asked for wide walkable landscape sidewalks with street furniture and canopy trees to encourage the lively street scene that I think we all want. Main thing is it has to be specific or it will not get done. And if we're worried that the developers and the owners won't be able to afford to charge a little less for the space in order to provide for these commercial uses, I have to say that it seems like that the rents that they are getting for the apartments are pretty good. And maybe they could use some of that to subsidize if it's a little less for those spaces. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us, Janet. Freddie Manning, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
All right, now can you hear me? Am I on
Yes,
now?
you are. We can hear you.
My name is Winifred Manning, officially. My home is 61 Fearing Street. I want to speak in opposition to the rezoning of the CVS lot with the overlay rezoning, and I urge you to vote no on that. I will not be speaking to the details of the article, but to the nature of the discussion. I believe the voices of those who stand to be most affected in articles such as this should be given the greatest weight. There's a difference between public buildings and people's homes. A peaceful home environment is not an abstract concept. I'm not an abutter to that property, but I do live in an in-town neighborhood. I could say it doesn't affect me directly, but I believe our town government must pay attention to and give more weight to people who stand to be most heavily affected by your decisions wherever they live in town. There's a difference between the public community life and the personal life one leads when we go to our homes. We choose where we go out into the town, but our home is a set location. For abutters to the property in question, this is not an abstract concept. It makes possible a real detriment that would negatively affect their personal life. For a community to be healthy, that personal life must be valued and respected. Objections to it have grown since the Amherst Bulletin reported that most were from the immediate neighbors. Well, that's no longer true. It's become much wider. Well, yes, and why wouldn't the immediate neighbors be very concerned? I'm sure if any of you were facing the same looming possibility, you might have some second thoughts. We're surrounded by beautiful countryside, protected by conservation areas we all treasure. I've had spontaneous conversations with friends who live out in these areas and learned only recently of the article and its impact, even though they have no need to object to their own circumstances. I've learned they can see themselves in the shoes of those who would be most affected. So passing it puts in place hard and fast conditions. It's not abstract. This is not the time, nor is it acceptable to pass an item which has no urgency, something to clean the slate because you, as the council, have discussed it for so long and you're tired of it. I know George Ryan and Evan Ross have worked hard on it, and I respect that, but they're not affected by the results of it. I would have a great respect for you if you would take a deep breath, and even though you feel the public is lagging behind, vote no. I believe it's in the best interest of our town and of the present form of government, especially, to show that you care about all districts and can show understanding and support for all those who are most heavily affected by your decisions. Please, I beg you, say no at this time. Thank you.
Winifred, thank you for joining us. The last hand that I see is Local 1764. Please identify yourself and where you live, your name and where you live.
Good evening. My name is Ben Graham. I'm the president of Local 1764, the Amherst Firefighters Union. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and I'll try to keep my comments short and brief. I'm here to speak specifically about the concerns related to your firefighters' well-being overall at the workplace. Your firefighters strongly object to the move to seek an exception of state law to allow Chief Nelson to remain as the chief of the department for a period for up to 17 months to potentially 5 more years. We just learned about this plan on Friday night when Chief called me at home at 9 p.m. and then informed me there would be a vote to pass this just 70 hours later after tonight's meeting. In fact, when I spoke to Chief Nelson in October, he assured me he planned to retire in April, and I honestly believe he meant when he said it this time. However, to learn of the plan to seek an exception in such a haphazard way with little time to formulate a response has placed members of Local 1764 in a very challenging position. That is also happening while having pending arbitration to settle our 6-month expired contract further exacerbates the challenges. In the past 12 hours, we've also discovered multiple town projects that will directly impact the future working conditions of our members. This makes us feel isolated and backs up our concerns with poor communications in our department and administration. Collectively, the body has been waiting for April when we have the opportunity for new leadership. We object to extending the chief's contract, and our objections to this are based primarily on a general dissatisfaction with the work environment created and cultivated over the past years. Inappropriate comments and actions have become a day-to-day norm for us, and the fear of retribution and fear of reassignment or other negative job performance reviews is rampant amongst our membership. We've drafted a letter in response to this move, which you all should have received by now, and will be made public following this meeting. This is a dynamic time in public service. New agencies being created, new ideas are being explored on how to best handle these challenges, and it is time for new leadership. Chief Nelson doesn't necessarily need to remain the fire chief to have a strong influence in Amherst. He can also be hired as a consultant to work specifically on new public safety projects where he can continue his great work in these areas. We thank Chief Nelson for his years of service here, and we look forward to celebrating his lengthy career in the fire service, and ask that you vote no to motion this petition to the state legislator for exemption to the new state for the state law mandating retirement firefighters at the age of 65. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'm seeing no other public comment. And so I'm going to continue on with the agenda. We are moving to the consent agenda, which we will show you on the screen. The following items were selected because they were considered to be routine, and it was reasonable to expect they would pass with no controversy. To remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion later in the meeting, ask that it be removed when I list the items. The request to remove an item does not require a second. So I'm going to read this as a motion and ask for a second. And we'll start with to move the following items and the printed motions thereunder and approve those items as a single unit. The first is a suspension of 8.4. All that does is allow us to vote tonight. It does not mean that is how we are voting. It means that we are allowed to vote tonight. There will still be discussion. So suspend Town Council Rules of Procedure Rule 8.4 for agenda item 8.8A. Town Council support for special legislation continuation of Walter in parens Tim Nelson as fire chief. 11A to J. This is a set of minutes that basically bring us to date. They start with February 6, 2021. This is a special town council meeting minutes from the Four Towns meeting. November 22nd, 2021, special town council meeting minutes, town manager evaluation. November 22nd, 2021, town council meeting minutes, public forum on appropriations outside the budget. November 22nd, 2021, regular town council meeting minutes. November 29th, 2021, special town council meeting minutes. December 6th, 2021, regular town council meeting minutes. December 9th, 2021, special town council meeting minutes joint with Town Services and Outreach Committee, primer/information session. December 9th, 2021, special town council meeting minutes joint with Town Services and Outreach Committee Crest Forum. December 9th, 2021, special town council meeting minutes joint with Town Services and Outreach Committee DEI Forum. December 13th, 2021, town council minutes orientation and special meeting. I see one hand raised. Dorothy?
I would like to remove the first item. I do not want us to vote on this tonight. I do not want to be drawn into a personal quarrel, which seems to me that some mediation outside of a town council meeting is appropriate. I really do not want us to vote on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Alyssa?
It's my usual point of order. That's a conversation to be had later in the meeting. Just pulling it off consent is pulling it off consent. We could still pass that suspension later tonight.
Correct.
And we could still act tonight.
Correct.
The argument should be made then, not now.
Correct. Are there any other comments at this time? Then I'm eliminating that one from the consent agenda, and the others are all minutes. Is there a second?
Shane seconds.
Athena, did you get that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to do a roll call vote. I'm going to start with Shalini Ballmill,
Yes.
Alyssa Brewer,
Aye.
Pat DeAngelis,
Aye.
Darcy Dumont,
Yes.
Lynn Griesmer is an aye, Mandy Johanicky,
Aye.
Dorothy Pam,
Yes.
Evan Ross,
Aye.
George Ryan,
Aye.
Kathy Shane,
Yes.
Steve Schreiber,
Aye.
Andy Steinberg,
Aye.
Sarah Schwartz.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay. We are going to go on with the agenda. There are no proclamations or resolutions, and there is no presentation and discussion. The action item before us is the Town Council support for legislation, continuation of special legislation, continuation of Walter Tim Nelson as fire chief. Paul, did you want to speak to your memo?
I would. Thank you, Lynn. So just to give some context, Massachusetts law sets age 65 as the mandatory retirement age for police officers and firefighters in every city and town in the Commonwealth. However, exemptions are available through legislative means, which is what we are presenting to you tonight. The exemption allows a firefighter, in this case, to receive a salary, but additional pension benefits are not increased for any years after 65. I want to have Tim Nelson continue as the town's fire chief beyond his 65th birthday, which occurs in April, and Tim would like to continue in this role after his 65th birthday. This is permissible and actually not unusual if the state legislature takes this up. I think our town attorney said he has handled about a half a dozen of these just in the last year alone. So it's a fairly common practice. And why? And it's often because of people are working longer than age 65. And the question is like, why are you asking for this? Why not abide by the 65? And I think that's a very good question. And there are three major reasons for this. One is Tim is a strong leader. He's an advocate for the fire department and has been successful at helping the fire department get stronger over time. At the beginning of COVID, he was one of the leaders in our COVID response team. He advocated for and got 4 additional firefighters, full-time staff that was funded through the CARES program because he knew the impact this would have on his current fire force. In the November of this year, these 4 positions are now being funded using ARPA funds and are projected to be maintained well into the future. He's also advocated to purchase a new $350,000 ambulance, which has arrived and is about to be put into service, which we're very pleased by. The council has appropriated $450,000 for a new pumper truck and $1.5 million for the fire department design and engineering for a new fire station, which he has been a strong advocate for as well. Most recently, the council approved a 3-year, $150,000 lease to own a series of cardiac units for our ambulances, which was earlier than it had previously been expected. So being a strong leader is not just in the town of Amherst, he's also a regional leader. He's looked at throughout Western Massachusetts and the state for his leadership and his throughout the fire community and emergency management community. He's also our emergency management director. And also, and I think this can't go underestimated, he's a leader of our department heads. Department heads look to Tim as one of the people who holds our team together. He's that guy, and I really appreciate his importance there. So that's the first major reason, is his leadership and the importance he has to our organization. Secondly, as you all know, we're building a new Crest program. This is a program that I had originally thought of as being in the community services, but the CSWG felt was very strongly that it should be under public safety, which we have moved it into public safety. If we're adding a third leg on the public safety stool, it was vital that the fire chief and the police chief be part of those conversations. Both have been willingly meeting weekly with the implementation team, with the leaders of the community safety working group to figure out this new department. Not many cities and towns are doing it this way, but we are. His leadership in that is important as well. And then last thing, so one of our goals in our community is to diversify our workforce. You've articulated that in your goals for me. Tim is a leader in attracting people to work here. Most recently, our recreation director was hired, and Tim was the lead on the welcoming committee to help him survive and make his mark in the town. This is an important role, especially to have a fellow African-American man there for you to check in on. This is how we are responding as a town. If we want to continue to recruit BIPOC members to our leadership team, we need to be clear that this is a place that we want people to thrive in. So those are the major reasons why this is coming up now. Tim will not work here forever. None of us will. But at this vital time, in terms of getting Crest up and running and moving forward with some of the goals that we've established for this year, I think it's very important that the town allow him to continue to be employed beyond his 65th birthday. And I just want to recognize that Chief Nelson is here, and also our HR director, Donna Ray Keneally, is here if you have questions or if you want me to respond to anything.
Are there questions from the council? Pat?
I have great respect for Chief Nelson, and I also have respect for the fire staff. So I'm interested in finding out from the town manager whether there'll be any meetings or ways that the chief and the department and you can get together to talk and work through some of the issues that seem to be surfacing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I may, Lynn, that's a really important question, because we do take any complaints of harassment or other intimidating behavior very seriously by me and by our human resources director. If you may know, Donna Ray is an attorney who has the highest integrity. If there's something that is being alleged and it's filed, it will be investigated thoroughly and addressed appropriately. We have a very thorough process for investigating, and also a policy where you cannot be criticized or I forget the word for it.
Retaliated.
No,
retaliation.
we have a strong retaliation policy so that people can, if someone brings a complaint, they are protected. So I think that in terms of what you asked, Pat, is are we willing to get together and talk with the union? Absolutely. My phone, I'm available. I will meet with representatives of the union. We are actively in negotiations with a collective bargaining. It's now moving into arbitration. So there is that context for, so this would be outside of that because that's a fairly regulated process that we have with the union.
Can those meetings include Chief Nelson? It's very possible that a lot of this could be talked out. I hope.
I think, we can offer both options to the union.
George Ryan.
Thank you, Lynn. This seems like an open-ended commitment, Paul. It's just employment after his 65th birthday. Was there any discussion of like saying for 2 years or a year and a half or 3 years, or was it, what controls how long this goes on?
So, so the chief is a contracted employee. He has the contract I would look at is that through June 30th of 2023 is what we'd be looking at this point in time. And you can actually put restrictions on the legislation if you so choose. I did not put that in there because I wasn't sure. My goal is to have my interest was having flexibility and having the chief engaged for as long as I felt like it was important to do it. So, but if the council feels it's important to put a deadline on it, I think we could obviously look at that.
George, do you have a follow-on question?
Yeah, just very quickly, I take it that Chief Nelson didn't express any kind of time limit. He just asked that it be extended.
I asked him to extend it, actually, George. So
Okay. And he said nothing about, okay, all right.
you can, he's here, you can ask him.
Yeah, I mean, I just wondering if in his own mind, he has a sense of how long this commitment, how long he thinks this commitment will be.
Oops, we lost him.
No, I'm back. I
Okay.
did the wrong one. How long the commitment? As I saw, one of the big things was Crest Program, and it's trying to get that off to the right start. So, I mean, for me, as I saw it, was my present contract ends June 30th, 2023. That's where I was looking.
Thank you. I have my hand up because I would like to make two separate comments. First, we need to do this because of the nature of our charter and the nature of these requests. We are not negotiating a personnel issue. All we are doing is asking for an extension past the age of 65, which is a state-imposed number, having nothing to do anymore with whether people are fit or whatever. The second thing, and I'm just going to say this from the heart, I've worked with Chief Nelson before I came on this council. I worked with him for 3 solid years as the chair of the DPW Fire Study Station Committee. As a woman, as a short woman, often seen as somebody who you can come up and put your arm around. I have never felt threatened by Chief Nelson. I have seen him only work with true and complete integrity. He is a compliment to our staff. And while I accept that some people may not feel the same way, I want you to know how I feel. Dorothy.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. And one is, couldn't this extension have been asked for earlier in due course? That's number one. And number two, I guess I never even thought about it, but how is a fire chief chosen? I guess I thought they were chosen by the men. That's what but I guess it's not. So my problem is the question of leadership. And I don't mean leadership of representing our town amongst other towns. I mean, a fire department is like a little military unit, and people have to work together. So people have to, there's a problem, and I don't know, I had not been aware of it. And some of it may be, brought out now because of contract negotiations, so which you have to kind of say, okay, maybe that's part of it. But I guess I just don't think it's up to the town council to make this kind of decision. Of course, we've all been happy with Chief Nelson, but I don't think that's the issue. So I'm troubled by the whole thing. And I don't like the idea that somehow we're going to take a vote as if it's up to us. Okay, because it isn't. Thank you.
Lynn, can you address that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the fire chief is a department head. The department head is appointed by the town manager with the approval of the town council. So the town council has a role in the selection or the approval of the appointment. It's done through a formal recruiting process where it's a very important job in the town. And there will most likely be internal and external candidates. We open it up. It's requirement of the charter that we post it and that it worked that way. It is a quasi-military operation. And I think, it's not unusual for a leader to be in conflict with the workforce. In many ways, that's part of the job description. the department heads are often in the position of saying no to employees, of instructing employees to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. I'm not saying that that's the case here, but that's when you take on the leadership role of a department, that's what you have to recognize, that you're not going to get everything you want from the town. You're saying, I want more things in the budget. So conflict is part of the relationship. It's built to be that way. So I think, the idea that, that it's a very important position that we will recruit heavily for, and that it would be unusual after a decade of service to not have some kind of conflict with your employees in some ways.
Steve Schreiber.
Just a couple points. So one is 65 is young. So if you're on town council, you'd be one of our younger members. The other thing is we're getting a peak. We've been on this together for 3 years, and now we're getting a peak that we've not had, which is basically how, we're almost being put into a performance evaluation for a department head, which is not our job. So really what we're deciding here is whether or not we want to enable our town manager, who's entrusted with making these decisions, to be able to make the right decision as to who should be the chief of the fire department, and not be encumbered by what seems to be basically an artificial limit. So, I support this motion because I believe that the town manager should be given that right to make this kind of decision based on whatever information he feels is important.
Darcy Dumont.
Yeah, I would just I have a couple, or at least one question. I was really concerned when I read the letter from the union today and the list of issues that was put forward to us. And one of the things that they asked was whether or not the issue could be tabled. And so I'm interested in knowing the timing. Is there any way that we could table it and that would give time to get more information about the issues that the union is bringing up and see if there's some kind of agreement or whatever? I will find it difficult to vote for it in light of the, what seemed to be serious complaints that were put forward.
The reason not to table this is because the legislature, as we have learned through our own experience with ranked choice voting, does not move at lightning speed. And April is, as far as we're concerned, just around the corner. So I strongly feel that this is the responsibility of this council. We should take care of it and move on. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion and look for a second. We're going to start with move to suspend Town Council Rules of Procedure 8.4, Rule 8.4 for the current agenda item. Is there a second?
Anarchy seconds.
Thank you. Is there any other question on the suspension of 8.4? Then I'm going to start with Alyssa Brewer.
Aye.
Pat DeAngelis.
Aye.
Darcy Dumont.
No.
Lynn Griesmer is an aye. Mandy Jo Haneke.
Aye.
Dorothy Pam.
Abstain.
Evan Ross.
Aye.
George Ryan.
Aye.
Kathy Shane. She's using a computer she's not used to. Kathy, can you unmute?
Aye. Yes.
Steve Schreiber,
Aye.
Andy Steinberg,
Aye.
Sarah Schwartz,
Aye.
Shalini Bowman.
Yes. Yes.
The vote's 11 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention, no absence. We will make sure that the legislature is aware of that as soon as possible. They need the certified vote.
We need to vote the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now we need to vote. We need to vote to support the passage of special legislation that it would enable Fire Chief Walter Tim Nelson to continue his employment with the town of Amherst as fire chief beyond his 65th birthday. Is there a second?
Haneke seconds.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Pat DeAngelis,
Aye.
Darcy Dumont,
No.
Lynn Grievers, and I. Mandy Johannicki,
Aye.
Dorothy Pam,
Abstain.
Evan Ross,
Aye.
George Ryan,
Aye.
Kathy Shane, Kathy, you need to unmute. Kathy, you need to unmute.
I know. I'm going to leave it unmuted because I'm having trouble doing it. I'm abstaining.
Okay. Steve Schreiber,
Aye.
Andy Steinberg,
Aye.
Sarah Schwartz,
No.
Shalini Bowman,
Yes.
Alyssa Brewer.
Aye.
The vote is 9 in favor, 2 opposed, 2 abstentions, and no absence. Now we'll make sure that they get the certified vote tomorrow. We're moving on to the zoning bylaw amendments. And I've asked the clerk to the town council to place these on the motions on the screen because I want to remind the council that these motions are presently on the table. Okay? They do not need to be made and seconded. They are presently on the table. We will begin with the first one, and that is with regard to the adoption of Article 3.325, mixed use building, and Article 12, definition of zoning bylaw. Are there any further comments or questions? Kathy?
Yes, I think this is the time I need to do this. I would like to make a motion to amend the percentage of non-residential, and Athena has the language. I tried to do 40% last time. This time I'm trying to do 35%. So the amendment, the only change that I'm making in this, I would accept the rest of it, is to go up to 35% for non-residential and go down to 65% on the ground floor. I would prefer 40, but I believe since I lost last time on 40, I can't come back with it again. So I'm making a motion to amend in the following way. Just those two numbers.
Is there a second?
Second, Schwartz.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is to amend the bylaw and replacing 30 with 35 and 70 with 65. Are there any questions about the motion? Kathy, did you have further things you wanted to say?
No, I think I sent enough in the last several meetings, and the people who have spoken, residents have spoken on why I'm trying to get this up, non-residential up as high as possible. So I'm hoping that 35% will be attractive to people who I think we need to change mixed use to have something on the books. And that's why I'm offering to move it not to 40, but to 35 as a compromise.
Are there any other further questions or comments? Mandy Jo?
I'm going to say similar things to what I said last time, which is I can't support this. I fear that anything going above 30% is a while good intentioned, in that it is, in an ideal world, ideal to have as much retail on the first floor as possible. We have to deal with reality though. And I think even 30% at this point is a stretch, given the reality and the retail market study that has shown what Amherst needs as of 2018, and we are in a worse retail situation than 2018. And therefore, I think the result of moving to 35% even as a minimum would be either we do not get new buildings, which maybe some people want, but we need the housing that comes along with mixed use buildings, or we have empty storefronts. And I say that because the retail market study from 2018 said that we had a total of need of 39,000 square foot of total retail demand throughout the entire town. Since 2018, 22,000 square feet of retail has been added at the Mill District in North Amherst. 11 to 13 East Pleasant is set to add approximately 5,000 square feet, which those two numbers together total 27,000 square feet of commercial space out of 39,000 total in town. That leaves us with 12,000 square feet of retail space that might be, as of 2018, was predicted as our total demand. In the North Square Mill District, 15,000 square feet of that is still empty, I believe. Even with 12,000 square feet, 11 to 13 East Pleasant Street has 17,000 square feet on the first floor as a gross floor area. So even going up to 35%, I believe is, I don't think it works in reality, and we have to live in reality. So I will be voting no.
At this point, we're speaking only to the amendment to change 30 to 35 and 70 to 65. Dorothy?
So I think we have a lot of contradictions floating around. Mandy Jo says we don't need any new growth because of the study says that we really can't have it. So then there's really no need for a parking garage. I did a tour Saturday before Christmas at noon, found that most of the CVS parking lot the town part was absolutely empty, 5 cars. And the CVS lot was half empty. If there is a need for a garage, then it's not for the vibrant streets, for the new store fronts and businesses we're going to have on the ground floor businesses, but it will be purely for the tenants of the new quote unquote mixed use buildings downtown. So I see tremendous contradictions in what's going on. Thank you.
Shalini?
Yeah, I think thinking of these numbers in the abstract is not, it doesn't make sense. When we look at our particular town and besides the retail study and the demand, even before COVID, we had many empty storefronts. And when we look at the existing plots, like we think about, we want to attract more small stores because the rents are really high. That's one of the reasons we have empty stores is the rents are really high. And then the other reason is a lot of online shopping happening with Amazon and so forth. And so it's not a very simple issue that we can just increase the availability and the people will come. On the contrary, when we increase the size of the ground floor, the way our town is configured, they're very narrow, long plot sizes. And so it's not like we can create like a Thorn. That was one of the ideas, is why can't we create something like a Thorn? That would require its own investment. But the way the buildings are right now, if you try to break up a long, narrow alley, the stores in the back do not have any light and it doesn't work out. It just increases the cost of rent of these really large sized buildings, spaces. And so keeping in mind that when we add up all the existing space that there is about 200,000 square feet of retail space available downtown right now. And we're encouraging new buildings to to provide now at least 30% more. So again, up until now, just to clarify, we don't have a minimum. So we are actually we're putting this demand on developers to raise our, okay, I just need to pause. I have an important call because I'm traveling today and I need a COVID test to come back to the US, and there's a call coming. So I'm going to resume my comments later, but I just want to say this is a very complicated issue, and I'm going to comment in a moment.
Please mute. Dorothy, you have your hand up and you're muted. Is there anybody else that would like to speak besides Dorothy, since she's already spoken? Okay. I realize Shalini would like to speak more to this. I personally am going to say that she's made her point that she wanted to make. And at this point, we have an amendment on the floor, and it is to change 30 to 35 and 70 to 65. Thank you. Athena was just telling me she can't share the screen and do the clock. Why don't you take the amendment down? Okay. Are there any other questions at this time? Alyssa?
I'd like to hear from the people who didn't support this, well, obviously it's been postponed several times. But what I'm just going to say very bluntly, I'm leery of going ahead and making this compromise, since I already feel like we've made the compromise to get to 30, and then still having it be voted down, and we still have nothing. And so I'm struggling a little with the theory of compromise, which I totally support, even though I feel like this is already a compromise. The amendment as a further compromise, which I could potentially support, but not if the intention is to still kill it because it's not 40 or 50 or 60. So I understand that that's what Kathy moved, but I guess I'd like to hear from some other counselors as to what their intentions are if this amendment passes.
Shalini, you were interrupted. Are you back now or what? Okay.
Yes.
I suggested that you had basically made your point. Is there any other point you need to make at this time?
I can come back because I do need to recollect my thoughts where I left off. So I'd rather listen to others, and I'll come back, please.
Thank you. Kathy?
Just to confirm what Alyssa said, I think she's asking, by offering this, I will support it if this is in it, Alyssa. I'm not just putting a number there. As I said, I prefer 40, but I think getting the number up is important. So it's not just a vote for a vote's sake. And just one more thing on the predictions. I've grown to think that predictions about what's going to happen are often wrong. We didn't think we'd even come out of COVID the way we have. We've been wrong. I'm trained as an economist, and I'm just used to being wrong when I try to do predictions about the future. So I think there can be a lot of creativity, particularly with the way this is worded now. I know some people don't like that it can be in different parts of the building, but for the long, narrow buildings, there is no reason retail couldn't be one floor up with stairs between it. So there's some wonderful restaurants or other things where you go downstairs, you pick up your food, you go upstairs, and you have a little balcony, and it makes the whole thing work in long, narrow buildings. So I think we shouldn't be fixated on it's not possible because we have narrow streets. London is full of these things that I call them squirrel ways of really narrow streets. So it's a good faith effort, Alyssa, is all I'm saying by me saying 35. I will vote for it if it has this in it.
Evan?
This has been a zoning amendment that I've seen now since March in various forms in my role of the CRC. And I've gone back and forth on how I feel about it throughout that time, because I am really nervous about setting a numerical percentage of this amount, a rigid numerical percentage about this number has to be commercial, because I think that what we've seen in development in our town is that every parcel is different and every part of our town is different. And maybe such a high percentage makes sense for downtown, but maybe it doesn't make, if this is mixed use buildings, this isn't mixed use buildings downtown, this is anywhere. And so maybe a high percentage makes sense for a mixed use building downtown, but maybe it doesn't make sense for a mixed use building in Pomeroy or for a mixed use building in North Amherst. Or I think about the mixed use building that's going up on South University Drive that has an optometrist office, which isn't that large, but takes up some space, and the rest is residential. You wouldn't want retail there. That's not a useful place for there to be retail. We're always talking about this in terms of retail. And so I have really struggled with whether this makes sense at any percentage from the beginning. And where I have come down is that I'm willing to hesitantly support 30%, but I do so actually with a fair bit of reservation, sort of in the opposite feelings that I think Kathy has. So I do intend to vote against this amendment because I'm already nervous about this in the first place. And I think 30% is a good place to start and see how it goes. And it can always be revised later, but I'm worried about setting it too high. And so sort of in response to Alyssa's question, I am a hesitant yes on 30%, but I am likely a no on the overall bylaw if this amendment passes.
Okay. Thank you. Sarah?
So I think that trying to find compromise is something that's sometimes been hard for this council to do. I would support this because I feel like it's a step in the right direction to try to find some compromise and for me to not just vote no on it. I would agree that I think we can't always tell exactly, what's going to happen in the future. We certainly didn't expect COVID. I would say that 35% to me is a step in the right direction because a mixed use building should have a decent, as far as I'm concerned, a decent amount of retail if it is mixed use. If it isn't, it's an apartment building. And then we should just call it that. The other thing is if we're looking to enrich village centers, if we're looking for more walkable communities, if we're looking to do away with cars, I think that we want vibrant small businesses that support neighborhoods. And I really, really would like to try to make that happen.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak to the question that Alyssa specifically asked? Okay, then I'm going to go on to Steve Schreiber.
Oh, man. Yeah. So, I appreciate Councilor Shane's doggedness in this. And, we might have even talked about this on the way to or from Lexington. I'm kind of with Councilor Ross on this. In other words, we have no idea if any of these numbers work. So right now there isn't a number. It's whatever the permit granted authority thinks is appropriate or can negotiate with the developers. So a no vote on this doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't get you 35%, 30%, 25%, it gets you nothing. So there's no motive at all for anyone in this council who thinks that the current bylaw is flawed to vote no, because what you're left with is the current bylaw. So the town meeting voted no, or voted to refer, basically 2016 on a similar bylaw, which actually did have a higher ground floor percentage. And the result was 5.5 years of the same bylaw. There was nothing, and the number of buildings that were built during those 5.5 years. So I just want to caution everybody that a no vote doesn't get you a better bylaw. A no vote gets you the existing bylaw. The developers are really good at gaming these bylaws. So often cited mixed use building on University Drive that was developed by Barry Roberts. The reason that that's a mixed use building and not an apartment building is because there's a leasing office that's open to the public, or that's public facing. If that leasing office were only for that building, it would be considered an office. An apartment building. That's the only difference. It has nothing to do with square footage. It has to do with the developer saying that this office looks out to the public and is available to the public, as opposed to this office is inward looking, only available to the residents. The same thing could happen in any building that's on the boards right now or on the boards in the future. is that an exercise room in the building could be made open to the public, and then that becomes part of the whatever the number is, 35%, 30%. Open only to the residents, it becomes part of the other number, 65%, 70%. So I think we're arguing about basically angels on the head of a pin, because I don't think there's a huge difference between 30% and 35%. I think the 30% is closer, is a less flawed bylaw than the one that we have. And I think that that's the one that we should try.
Andy Steinberg.
Yeah, I actually have a question, not a comment, and the question may be going to planning staff or to CRC members. Was any consideration given at any time during the process to varying the percentage requirement depending upon the zoning district in which the building was being sought?
We are pleased to welcome both Chris Brestrup and Rob Morrow tonight. So, Chris?
We did not consider that. We can consider it in the future, but we had so many zoning amendments on the docket, and we were, I would say, reluctant to introduce extra levels and layers of confusion. And so we didn't consider that at this time, but it certainly could be considered in the future.
Okay, thank you. Dorothy?
A no vote gets you nothing today, but it doesn't say that it doesn't get you something tomorrow, which could be a slightly altered bill, which would have an increased percentage. And I totally agree with Evan that place, location should be accounted in here. Downtown is one thing, small village centers are others. So I have enough confidence in the new council coming in and the old councilor staying on and the planning department that we could very quickly get a better bill to vote on. The temptation is to vote on what we have now because it's better than nothing. And then you say, well, I've done that, check that one off. And we haven't really done it. So I am saying that we should have faith and confidence that very soon we could get a slightly different, but a better mixed use building bylaw. Thank you.
Mandy Jo.
This mixed-use building bylaw was referred to to CRC and the planning board for a hearing in early June, which is not 6 months from more than 6 months, I believe, at this point. So very quickly might mean different things to different people. Whatever way we vote today, if we vote to pass this, and I'm not necessarily talking about the amendment itself because I don't know whether that will pass or not, but with or without this amendment, if it passes, that doesn't stop it from anyone introducing a motion to amend what we just passed today. If whether or not this amendment passes, the 65 versus 70, if the main motion fails, because this bylaw received a positive recommendation from the planning board, is my understanding that it could be brought back for amendment without waiting 2 years. And it could, but in the meantime, you're at zero. You're at what we have now for the next 6, 7, 8 months, because how long will it take the next council to potentially reach a different compromise where you can get 9 votes? Because it's not 7 you need in any council, it's 9. And so I am urging us to start with 30 and 70, because there are some of us on this council that already believe that is a stretch. Put that on the books. And if there are others on this council that believe the next council has the votes for a larger percentage of minimum retail, try for an amendment and see if that one's there. But in the meantime, 30 and 70 will be on the books.
I have a question of Chris. And Chris, this really goes back to planning board discussions. that I happened to be at for another reason. But recently, I got the impression that one of the applicants is waiting to see what we do with this before they finish their application. Could you clarify that for me? I'm not sure I'm correct.
That is correct. Archipelago had a building that was approved last summer based on the existing zoning bylaw. And they're waiting to see, number one, whether this mixed-use building passes. And then if it does pass, what percentage we're talking about. And then depending on the outcome of the vote, I imagine that the proponents of that building will come and ask Rob Mora sometime in the next few days, okay, well, now we know what rules we're dealing with. Does our building comply or doesn't it comply? And of course, they will try to make the argument, that their building complies. But I really don't know if their building can comply with, excuse me, my dog is climbing up on my lap. But I don't know whether their building will comply. And that will be resolved once we know what number we're dealing with and whether this passes or not.
Thank you, Chris. The amendment is on the floor. The amendment is to change 30 to 35 and 70 to 65. Is there any further discussion? This is on the amendment, not on the total thing. Shalini.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, for us, these are numbers and it seems like we want to compromise, and which is always a good thing, but numbers have impact on the stakeholders that will be impacted by it. And yes, residents are one set of stakeholders. We want to visit downtown, and that's what we're talking about. But we're also talking about developers, and we're also talking about building more housing, so we have more workforce housing. So there are all these different stakeholders that are going to be impacted by our decisions. What I wanted to propose, again, that some of what's been said is that we are improving upon what already exists. We're moving in the right direction. We did pass inclusionary zoning, so new developers will be required to provide affordable housing units. We are from 0 with no specification, we're going up to 30%. That's a huge requirement and has huge impact on existing developers who have projects in the pipeline and in the future. We are going to be hiring a form-based code designer and to work with us. So we're moving in the right direction is what I want to invite us council to think about, and also the people watching and the residents, is that what we're doing is not isolated. We do have a plan and we're all moving in that direction. So I really urge us to start with this, and as Mandy just said, in the future we can always improve upon it, but we don't want to go back to 0. Rather, let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to add one more thing to the conversation, which is that we already know that the planning department is going to be working on a solar bylaw and a solar assessment in the next year. We're also going to be working on trying to get our flood maps approved. And there are a number of other things that are in the wings. So I would say that, counting on a redo of this particular amendment coming to the town council in the next 6 months may be wishful thinking, because there are a lot of other things that are pending that are potentially ahead of this. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Dorothy, you've spoken. I'm going to go to Alyssa because she's not had a chance to speak on this.
I guess maybe not quite as many times as Dorothy. So as I hear this unfold again and keep hearing people talk about slightly different variations on this, it's totally justified to try and increase the percentage. I get that we don't all agree on that people perceive that data that Mandy Jo has referred to and that Shalini has referred to different ways, and they just don't agree with that being a compelling factor. And so instead of 30, they want 35 or 40 or 50 or 60. I totally understand that. And if this council passes that amendment, then that's what we'll have. What I'm not comfortable with is I'm hearing people say, a couple of people say, you know what, if I can't have that percentage, I'm not going to vote for it at all because the next town council will magically make this happen. And I think we've just heard several reasons why that magic is unlikely to occur in the near future. And that means that the councilors who vote it down are saying it's fine with them that there's no percentage in there now. And I don't believe that. I think I don't believe you're fine with it being 0%. So whichever the compromise turns out to be, whether it's 30 or 35%, this council should be supporting it because 0 is the wrong number.
Okay. Dorothy, I see you and Shalini.
But I am confused. We're told vote for this and we'll be able to change it. And then we're told, well, you're not fat chance, you're not going to be able to change it. So that really does make it look different. And then I'm wondering, why did we not do the whole thing at once? Some of the letters that have come in have mentioned that that there need to be setbacks, there need to be green space. You know, that's not here. That was in many versions of this, you know, months ago, but it's not here. So this is a very small part of what we needed to do and were asked to do. And if this is all we're going to get for a couple of years, I'm just saying this has not been a good process. And I'm very unhappy. I'm not saying I'm not going to vote for it, but I'm saying this is not what I thought was supposed to go on. Thank you.
Shalini, final comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think this zoning amendment is separate from the design code, and that's a design aspect of the zoning that is not related to this. And so there are two different things and we need to vote on them. So it's okay for them to be separate. But what I was saying is, as I was looking at other towns and looking at like Burlington, which is one of my favorite towns, college towns, and while they have more retail space on the ground floor, they also do allow 8 and 9 floors. So we can't have it that we want our floors limited to 4 or 5, but then we also want, so all I'm saying is hard to compare with other towns. And I think what we need to focus on is, who do we have here? How can we work with the people? How can we bring more activity through our concerts, through our new performance shell, through new art, through bringing in UMass and their performances? So how do we work with the stakeholders that exist in our town, and through dialogue and conversations, let's keep moving forward, even if it seems like, I think 30% is a pretty big step forward. It's not one small step forward. And so I would encourage us to vote this, and then, yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other comments at this time. So the vote at this point is on the amendment. The amendment would change 30 to 35 and change 70 to 65. I'm going to start with DeAngelis. Pat?
No.
Darcy?
Yes.
Lynn Griesmer is a no. Mandy Jo?
No.
Dorothy Pam?
Yes.
Evan Ross?
No.
George Ryan?
No.
Kathy Shane?
Yes.
Steve Schreiber?
No.
Andy Steinberg?
No.
Sarah Schwartz?
Aye.
Shalini Bowman?
No.
Alyssa Brewer?
No.
I have 4 yes and 9 no.
Thank you. So the amendment fails. We're back to the original motion. The original motion, which is already on the floor, is to adopt revisions to Article 3.325, mixed use building, and Article 12, definitions of zoning bylaw, by adding language shown in the bold italics and deleting language shown in the bold strike throughs on page 15 to 16 of the motion sheet. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm moving to a vote. Darcy Dumont.
I just wanted to make my very short statement here, if I can find it, that is. I actually don't favor the proposed amendment to the definition of
I have a point of order. The chair called the question.
Pardon?
I
The
asked
president
for
called the
comment.
question. We're voting.
No, nobody raised their
Yeah,
hand.
the question, the chair called the question. We're voting.
Oh, I did not hear that. You called the question?
I
said we're
said,
voting.
I don't see any other hands, so we're moving to the vote.
Oh, I couldn't raise my hand. I couldn't get it up for some reason, so.
So Darcy, you're the first person I'm calling on for your vote.
So I don't get to make a statement?
I would prefer that we go on with the vote, but if you insist, please make your statement.
Well, I just wanted to say that I basically agree with Janet McGowan's analysis that she sent listing 17 reasons why we shouldn't adopt the 30% language. And I really believe the percentage of commercial space on the first floor should be increased as recommended by the Planning Department, Planning Board, and Select Board. And that we shouldn't be including language that allows the required commercial space to be located above the first floor. She also noted that useful design and setback requirements were removed and should be put back in. So adding these these requirements would help create and promote active street life, room for people, plants, dining benches, etc. So I'm not going to list all of Janet's objections, obviously, but the public can read them in the packet.
Okay. So we are now moving to the vote. Darcy?
No.
Lynn Griesmer is a yes. Mandy Johanneke?
Aye.
Dorothy Pam?
Yes.
Evan Ross?
Aye.
George Ryan?
Aye.
Kathy Shane?
Yes, because it needs to be on the books.
Steve Schreiber?
Aye.
Andy Steinberg?
Aye.
Sarah Schwartz?
Aye.
Shalini Ball-Milne?
Yes.
Alyssa Brewer?
Aye.
Pat DeAngelis?
Aye.
My vote shows that it is 12 in favor, 1 opposed. Is that correct, Athena?
That's what I have, yes.
Okay, 0 abstained and 0 absent. It passes. We're going to the official zoning map. And this, again, motion is on the table. So we do not need the motion made and seconded. The motion is as you see it right now, number 2 on the page in front of you. Are there comments? Kathy?
Yes, I will stay within my 3 minutes, but I would just like to make a statement about this. I will be voting against this amendment for a simple reason. There is no need to rush. Let me explain why I think this. First, the council just voted for a major expansion of the Jones Library, which is next to the lot in discussion. We should not rush to judgment about whether or not we need a garage in this specific space. Jones Library construction over the next years will disrupt traffic and heighten the need for space. To open the possibility, even the possibility of a second construction zone next door makes no sense. Second, let's take time to plan, or I might even say dream, though I don't tend to use those words. For example, during the Jones Library construction, we have time to assess the best use of this very valuable town-owned lot. With luck, we're going to have a central fire station building empty if we find a place to build it. And we can repurpose it for creative uses. Think about housing or creative arts. Third, let's take time to study. The town parking study that we paid for said we do not need to have a garage. We have enough space in town if we use it wisely and we have deals with private lots and improved signage. In fact, they warned against a garage. Let's take the time over the next year to work with private owners to open up these parking spaces and then consider whether we really need a garage. Fourth, we need time to understand. Over 30 years ago, we paid nearly $500,000 for this 2/3 of an acre. This is now very valuable land. So it's questionable fiscal policy to rush to offer a valuable public lot to an unknown private entity. I was always taught to believe that if something is too good to be true, there's likely more to the story. Is there really an investor willing to pay as much as $10 million to build a garage where the public will be able to park at reasonable rates? Will we lose revenues we currently get for this lot? What is the story? Let's take time to find out. In summary, there's simply no rush. We have time to think, time to plan, and time to understand. If we take that time, we will make sure we don't risk problems with the Jones Library because we are rushing to build a garage we might not need in a location that may not be the best choice because of the narrow street and poor access, with developers to date who are in the shadows. Please join me in voting no. We are planning for a future beyond this council term.
Darcy.
Yeah, I would just say the many commenters from the public who commented against supporting this bylaw amendment really explained the problem in great detail, better than I could do it. And I am not going to speak very long because I basically was going to make the same points that Kathy just made about the fact that we need to do a better job establishing a need for such a parking facility and a better job looking at alternative sites or having an updated study of alternative sites. So I would also urge councilors to vote no on this.
Thank you. Having remained silent on this issue, I'm finally going to speak. We are not voting to build a parking garage. We are voting to zone a spot so that should we choose to build a parking garage down the road, we will be able to. And you might remember that I specifically asked, with some people looking at me a little skance, like, why didn't you know that? Could we still use it for another use? Yes, we can. And maybe, in fact, there is better use. I am going to vote for this, but I'm going to vote for this with the full understanding that in this next council, I will be asking our town to look at all of the other options, including the garage that my husband helped try to build up to 3 levels and was defeated, and also the Amity and possible other adjacent lots. I'm not clear that this is the best location, but I will tell you, after all the work that has been put in to bring it forward, to rezone it for the possibility, I'm voting yes. Thank you. Alyssa.
Thank you. I'm really weary of the few members of the public who believe that town councilors who support this parking overlay could only be doing so because they're in the pockets of developers, which is patently ridiculous, just simply ridiculous and incredibly offensive to the hard work of these town councilors. The reason we need to pass this zoning change now, in addition to the reasons just stated eloquently by our president, is why are we studying things that are not possible? We love to study things to death that don't even have real possibilities at the other end. We need to do better at that. We are not going to study and hold outreach meetings about the Boltwood site without having hired an engineer, which I might point out we've been asking town staff to do for probably close to a decade to find out if that site's actually usable as it was initially sold to us, yes, as expandable, to encourage us to accept what ended up being woefully overpriced, an underbuilt garage compromise after years of litigation. We don't know if under current construction standards, it can be used. We should not be holding outreach meetings, brainstorming sessions, public hearings, or anything else about parking garages until we know that. Do we study and hold outreach meetings about the Amity Street lot that may have a deed restriction, as was described many years ago, and may or may not actually exist? We don't know that. We should pass this possible work here so that we know that if we put any effort into this, it's going to be possible. We absolutely should not approve any release of an RFP before we know the answers to those other two locations. We should have the results of the engineering study. We should have the results of the deed restriction list. We should have results of any shortcomings there might be about the Prey Street site, which pops up now and again. Be very clear on the needs we have and the public-private partnerships that could still be pursued, for example, in the Prey Street lot and with the banking lots. But if we don't set this up as a possibility, it is a huge waste of time to discuss it as a possibility without the zoning overlay making it possible to actually do at some future point.
Andy?
Yes, some of the points have just been made, but I'm going to go in some of the same direction and add some things. As pointed out, this is a vote about zoning. It is not a vote to build. If in the after study, if it is rezoned, a decision is made to take it forward, it is going to have to come back to the council again because this is a town lot, town-owned land, and there's going to have to be a sale or long-term lease. I tried to do some research today on the question of whether a sale or long-term lease requires 2/3 vote of the council in order to do it. That certainly was the rule as we, as we were continuously told by town meeting by many moderators and the attorneys who were advising those moderators. I did find statutory language about sale. I did not find anything about long-term lease as I was doing that work. We've gotten a lot of good comments from both people for and against having a garage at that location. A lot of the people who were speaking against it were raising questions that have been alluded to in this discussion. This is now, if we pass this, the time when we can go forward and actually have that investigation. And I think that we will have some incentive to offer the Business Improvement District to assist us in funding that study, which would otherwise be totally on the town to pay for if we don't get some help from the outside. And I don't think we're going to get the help from the outside without a yes vote tonight. And a point was made about last Saturday and the lot being totally empty. The weather was terrible last Saturday. It was raining and cold, and nobody was going downtown, and there was no parking, nobody parking anywhere. Just want to point that out. But the one thing that I said before and that I want to conclude with is that we need parking that is close to the places where people want to go. The library, the cinema, and we've heard continuously from the cinema, the Drake, the Common when there's concerts on the Common. And we can experiment with things like better signage at Prospect and Amity, and then either reversing the direction of Prospect and Halleck Street or making Prospect Street two-way from Amity to the lot and back, so we can see if being able to know there's parking and find it easily is really going to make that lot successful. And if we don't make that lot successful, then we'll know something about whether it's a good location for the garage. So
Thank you, Andy. Evan?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to just respond to some of the questions that people had or concerns people raised about the need, whether this is even needed in the first place. And I want to say that I'm more optimistic about the future of our downtown now than I have been in a really long time. I think that we are seeing positive changes in our downtown that will make Amherst a regional destination. From the performance shell on the Common that we approved just last meeting, to the Kendrick Park Playground, to an expanded and renovated Jones Library, to the Drake, to outdoor dining, we're seeing a renewed vibrancy in our downtown. And much credit is owed to town staff and to the bid and to the chamber. But we also owe ourselves credit for the work that we've done to invest in our downtown. But as we watch our downtown change and as we continue to make it a destination, we need to make sure that it has the infrastructure to accommodate increased visitation by both residents and visitors. You know, the often cited Nelson Nygaard 2019 parking study predicted a 12% increase in parking demand over the next 5 years and noted that our current public parking is insufficient to meet this need. And that study didn't take into account all of the downtown investments and changes that I just mentioned. Those things weren't even on our radar yet. And so if we want a dynamic and vibrant downtown, if we want a downtown that brings in people to support a thriving local economy that we all want, that we just talked about in our last zoning discussion, then we need clear destination parking. And our current hodgepodge of surface lots doesn't meet that challenge. You know, we've heard from some folks that they don't struggle to find parking or they don't feel that parking is a problem. But for folks coming from outside Amherst, maybe for the first time, navigating parking is a challenge. We heard that from the many, many, many downtown businesses that have written in support of this proposal. And to say that there isn't a parking problem is a statement that's rooted in our present. It's not planning for the future. It's not based in the future that we as a council are building for our downtown. And so so many people have mentioned this zoning measure is just a first step. It is a first step towards creating a centralized destination parking in the heart of our downtown to support our local businesses, to support downtown events, and to allow for our downtown to grow and thrive so that we can fill those commercial spaces that we just mandated we have to create in new developments. And so I'm encouraging my colleagues to allow us to take this first step. It's just a first step, the zoning of a much larger process, but nothing else can happen if we don't take this first step. Thank you.
Dorothy?
Okay. So I have been worried about this because I think that there have been so many excellent letters that have stated the case so clearly, and they're not being listened to. So I thought, well, what can we do? And today in the shower, I remembered a concept that had delighted me as an undergraduate when I learned about the cargo cult. The cargo cult is that some people who lived on some islands far away from Western civilization experienced the revealing when the troops came in during World War II with airplanes and all kinds of goods and technology. They were astonished and astounded, and they were very excited by it. But at some point, the war was over. The troops went home. And so they got very busy, and they set up something that looked like airstrips, and they built bonfires along them, built a little wooden shed, and they made earphones out of some wood and put some sticks to look like antenna. And they sat there and they waited for the plane, the cargo ship, to land. But it didn't land. So Richard Feynman in 1974, and he's a great scientist, described why that doesn't work. And he calls it cargo cult science. If you're missing something, that you do something that looks like it should work, but it doesn't work. You follow the instructions, perform the rituals, memorize the definition, but you don't actually understand the process without capturing the essence, without learning anything. So that method is not scientific. What they're missing is that you have to have a better overall business strategy. You can't fix things just by making it look like something. You have to have holistic thinking, a rethinking of the whole problem from the beginning. And you have to get your fundamentals very clear. Don't aim for fast results with superficial learning. You have to hypothesize, experiment, explore, and remember the scientific method. And what we've had is a bunch of cheerleading and people saying, if we build it, they will come. They will come and we'll have this wonderful rebirth. And I don't think that's the way it works. So I'm just saying, I think it's time to kind of stop, get out of our ruts. We're in a deep rut where these people believe this, other people believe that. And we have a huge body of the public that has sent brilliant, intelligent letters, which I hope some of you have read some of them because they lay things out very clearly. So I want you to think about, we should do scientific thinking, not cargo cult science. Thank you.
Shalini?
Yeah, I actually wanted to say that I have a lot of trust in all of us, and including the council that's going to come, our town staff, our planning board, and our residents. We've heard from so many of you and so many people, and those are all excellent points. And to say that we are not ignoring them, we are really, really listening to them, and they will be included in part of the process. And I also feel that there is this idea that we are just haphazardly or making disjointed decisions. But in fact, there is a shared vision through all the public meetings we'd have, forums we've had. There is a shared vision and the presentation made by the planning staff and bid, where we had Destination Amherst, there was the idea of the performance shell. There was going to be a parking garage, and so the hard decision we made with the North Common losing the parking was because the overall vision was that we centralize the parking in some space. It doesn't have to be CVS. We're starting there, but there is going to be a due process to figure that out. But that's the reason why we were hesitatingly willing to lose some of the parking there, so that there is going to be centralized, but it's not. The main areas are for meeting and gathering, and the parking is going to be hidden and tucked away. So there is a vision and a plan. And the other thing I wanted to highlight was the parking study that keeps coming up, the 2019 parking study that residents have brought up. And it's really what we choose to pick out of that, because key findings on page 8 say many people struggle. These were the residents who said, and this was a summary of the residents' comments, and the report says many people struggle to find parking in downtown Amherst, and construction of a parking garage is desperately wanted by both residents and commuters. On page 10, again, attendees were split whether they want on-street, off-street, but strongly preferred adding public parking supply. On page 38, they said new facilities via public-private partnerships was one of the options. As development continues, the report says, new parking facilities will be required. The town should seek partnerships with developers and other stakeholders interested in adding to the parking supply. And so the reason why are developers doing this? Because they are adding more housing and they are interested in providing us a solution, working with the town to provide a solution for more parking. So it really depends on what we choose to read in that report and the other forums we've had in 2018, the two public forums that are there on our website where residents came together in Bank Center and in the library. And again, if you look at the summary of the reports on our town website, parking was such a high need amongst the people. So there is a demand. And we are going to have more demand once the Jones Library expands, once the Drake comes, once the performance shell happens. We need to get rid of that perception. So okay, yep, that's all. Thank you.
Sarah?
So I think that it's been shown that when town council changes zoning, it is a clear sign to the planning department that we desire to have something happen. When we talked about this lot and asked, could we look at other places? We were told by planning and by the planning board, well, you didn't tell us to look at any other places. When Nelson Nygaard came and presented to us in September, I think our first year, their findings about, maybe it was our second year, about what their findings were, they gave us many different strategies. to start with. They told us that we were only reaching threshold, barely, not quite even threshold, 1 day a week. And that unless we start hitting threshold 5 days a week during the summer, should we then think about a parking garage? In fact, when it came up in a meeting, when they were presenting to us, should we build a garage? They said, we know you're going to be tempted, but please don't, because it's so expensive and the upkeep is the most expensive part. And I'm confused why this council has been told to listen to the experts and the people who do the work, except we're not listening to them now. And maybe it's hypocritical of me to say, well, I'm not really sure who the expert is, and I'm not always believing, but I feel like I'm just getting fed a lot of different conflicting facts. And I think that if we vote this right now, we're voting that we're going to do it, because at the very end of Nelson Nygaard's presentation to us in the town room, Gabrielle Gould, who's the head of bid, came up and had a statement, and she said, this was a great report, but we just want you to know we are going to build a parking garage. And it's one of your strategies. So we knew way back then that that is the intention. That is the only intention. And, I want to compromise, but I have a hard time when I feel like I'm being fed a lot of very conflicting stories.
Are there any other comments? Kathy?
Just one quick one. I wish I hadn't delved in how long we've been working on this issue, but in 1990, forget the recent one, we actually had a schematic design when this lot was an acre, not 0.68. They didn't change zoning, Lynn. They did a schematic design for a garage and gave us an estimate of what it would cost. I don't think we have to change zoning first. I think we could get really good numbers if we think a garage is needed. I just disagree with the rezone first and then explore. And so I'll just repeat, I don't think we don't need to rush. This is incredibly valuable land we own. This is why people don't want to build on their own private lots. There are private lots that they could build on. This is a good piece of land. So I just remain, if someone has money they want to put in, I would just love it if they would come to the table and say, let's find the best slot. And I want it to be public parking. I want it to be short-term public parking like Greenfield has. It's 50 cents an hour. That's great. I'm just not sure that's where we're going. So I don't think we need to zone first. I think we could look at where we could do this first. So I just want to point that out, because we paid for a whole schematic design without rezoning on a lot is twice as big as this, not quite twice as big. So it's not essential to rezone first.
Are there any other comments? Last call for comments. Then we're going to move to the question, which is to adopt, let's see. To adopt a new parking facility district as part of Section 2.04 to special districts and as Section 3.23 parking facility district of the zoning bylaws shown on page 11 to 14 of the motion sheet. I would begin the vote with Lynn Griesmer, and it's an aye. Mandy Jo?
Aye.
Dorothy Pam?
Proudly votes no.
Evan Ross?
Aye.
George Ryan?
Aye.
Kathy Shane?
No.
Steve Schreiber?
Aye.
Andy Steinberg?
Aye.
Sarah Schwartz?
No.
Shalini Bowman?
Yes.
Alyssa Brewer?
Aye.
Pat DeAngelis?
Aye.
Darcy Dumont?
No.
The vote is 9-4. The vote passes. We're moving on to, we are moving to a break. We will reconvene at 8:35. Please unmute and take your picture down. Okay, it appears that we are all back except for Andy, who's critical to this piece. Andy, when you return, please put your screen back on.
Lynn, if we're
I
ready
think
to
we're
begin-
missing.
We're missing Dorothy, right?
Yeah, I'm counting heads now. I think we are.
Did
missing
she
someone.
disconnect?
It looks like it. I'm going to check in with her now.
Okay.
We could also, if we're waiting for Andy and don't know when he might be able to rejoin, move on to D, E, and F, and then come back to C.
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on with D. It's the bylaws for future consideration. And the motion is as follows. To request the town manager provide the town council with information regarding the following general bylaws by June 30th, 2022, as detailed in the Governance, Organization, and Legislation Committee memo, recommended disposition of referral of bylaws identified for future consideration. It is dated December 6, 2021. And the bylaws that are listed for future consideration, but are still requiring some information are Bylaw 2.4, it's Personnel Bylaw, Bylaw 3.3, Human Rights and Human Rights Commission, 3.7, License and Permits, Denial, Revocation, or Suspension for failure to pay municipal taxes or charges, Bylaw 3.16, Littering and Illegal Dumping, Bylaw 3.31, Wetlands Protection, Bylaw 3.46, Right to Farm, Bylaw 3.49, Residential Rental Property, Bylaw 3.34, Regulation of Signs, and Bylaw 3.35, Parades and Public Meetings. Is there a second?
Ryan, second.
Thank you. George, I'm going to call on you because this is coming out of GOL and you've written an extensive memo about each bylaw and what is needed. And do you have any further words at this point?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we please confirm Councilor Pam can hear us? She was disconnected a moment ago.
Yes.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Dorothy. Can you hear us? Okay. And Andy is back as well. Okay. So Andy, we're going to come back to the guidelines in a moment. We didn't pass them while you were gone. You know, we tried, but we decided not to. So bylaws, are there any further questions on this? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to a vote. The vote begins with Mandy Jo.
Aye.
Dorothy Pam.
Yes.
Evan Ross.
Aye.
George Ryan.
Aye.
Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Steve Schreiber.
Aye.
Andy Steinberg.
Aye.
Sarah Schwartz.
Aye.
Shalini Bowmill.
Yes.
Alyssa Brewer.
Aye.
Pat DeAngelis.
Aye.
Darcy Dumont.
Yes.
Lynn Griesmer is an aye. It's unanimous. Since we're on this topic, let me just explain. The next item on the agenda is there as a placeholder. We have no items that are being voted on to not go forward, but we wanted to make sure it was noted in this agenda because it has to be that way every 2 years from now on the last meeting. So with that, I'm going to go, I'm sorry, the next one was consideration, was actually council committee transition memos and the only one there is Finance Committee, and we'll come back to that, and then was F. So let me just go back, and we're going to go to the Town Council Budget Policy Guidelines. I'm going to do what we did before. We're going to go through them and ask. This is an amended version. It was amended after our last discussion. Are there any questions or requested changes to the opening 2 paragraphs? Okay, seeing none. Are there any suggested changes or questions regarding Roman numeral 1, executive summary and overall philosophy and concerns for FY23? Okay. We're going on to Roman numeral 2, revenue projections. Any changes or requested questions? Going on to Roman numeral 3, expenditures. Changes, suggestions, questions. Seeing none, we're going to on for expenses for operation. Changes, questions. Seeing none, we're going to 5, expenses for capital. Changes or questions. Seeing none, we're going to 6, which is 1 paragraph, other budget needs. Seven, budget process. 8, planning for future years. And 9, conclusion. Mandy Jo.
Actually don't have a change in the conclusion. I just want to say thank you to the Finance Committee for their hard work on this matter and the revisions that took place between the last one and this one. I really like the new headings in each of the main sections too. So I just wanted to thank the full committee for their work getting these to us.
Thank you. Darcy?
Yeah, I just have a comment that I wanted to make in general. I'm not asking for an amendment. I just wanted to make a comment in general about, especially with regard to climate action. Yes?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to be referring to the implementation grid that's in the packet. So if anybody wants to look at it, it's the last item in the packet. And it needs to be zoomed in on. It's pretty hard to read. It's got very small print. So I want to thank the Finance Committee for doubling to $200,000 the funds in the FY23 capital budget, especially for taking advantage of expected grant opportunities for climate action and adding more language stressing that the climate action plan may also include costs. On paragraph 4 of page 6, the letter states that the climate action goals, quote, should be considered in the development of the FY23 budget with explicit recognition of instances when budget allocations or decisions reflect the goals, unquote. We have 3 fiscal years to meet our 2025 Town Council goal of reducing our emissions by 25%. So we need to be jump-starting that process now. I asked to include the updated itemized implementation grid in our packet. The grid is simply a condensed version of the Climate Action Adaptation and Resilience Plan presented to the Council in June with nothing added, except there's a green highlight to indicate the 25 actions that are included in the CARP within the 25% greenhouse gas emissions reduction calculation. And they would be those actions that would fulfill our council goals, or could. the actual amount of greenhouse gas reduction calculated is included for those items. Only 3 general 2025 action item areas are rated high for greenhouse gas reduction. And they are the implementation of community choice aggregation, the implementation with local rental property owners of the commercial PACE program, and a rapid transition to zero emission vehicles. So I'm pointing this out because much work was put into developing this plan and the roadmap to 25% emissions reduction. It's my belief there's no possible way to achieve our climate goals on time without more funding and more staffing. It's an issue of timing and of the urgency of the climate crisis. ECAC has asked in the last 2 years for a department level position and other relevant positions. The CARP lists adding staff capacity also.
Darcy, can you do wrap up?
Okay, I have about 1 minute left. Yes, we do have a sustainability coordinator and she does a great job, but she has many hats and is already pulled in many directions. And because her work is as a coordinator and not a department head, she works 9 to 5. If we truly want to achieve our climate goals by 2025, we need to act with urgency. And that means we don't simply tell our coordinator that she has an additional 25 to 54 actions. She's in charge of implementing above and beyond her existing overfull plate. Thus, I propose the use of the ARPA sustainability funds for 3 staff positions. 1, a full-time staff consultant in charge of startup implementation of the action items in the 2025 roadmap. 2, a full-time outreach consultant for the action items that require outreach and education to the public and to businesses. And that position could also provide energy coaching for residents and administration of a community climate dashboard. And 3, a full-time energy manager staff position in charge of building, heating, and retrofitting energy efficiency and tracking energy efficiency, solar energy storage and microgrid siting and installation, interfacing with the CCA entity when it's on board. 1 9 to 5 coordinator.
Darcy, please finish up.
I have 2 more sentences. 1 9 to 5 coordinator cannot possibly do what needs to be done within the time allotted. The chance we have to do this with the ARPA funds is not something that will come around again. Using these funds for a one-time project will not put us ahead in implementing the plan as a whole, like staff in charge of the broad scope of implementation would. This would show our commitment to getting this done and done on time.
Thank you. Is there any other comment with regard to the guidelines? The motion is to adopt the FY23 budget policy guidelines as presented. Is there a second?
Shane seconds.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Then I'm moving to a vote. I believe I begin with Dorothy Pam.
Yes, and thanks to Kathy and Andy.
Evan?
Aye.
George Ryan?
Aye.
Kathy?
Yes.
Steve Schreiber?
Aye.
Andy Steinberg? Andy?
Yes. Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Shalini Bowman?
Yes.
Alyssa Brewer?
Aye.
Pat DeAngelis?
Aye.
Darcy Dumont?
Yes.
Lynn Griesmer is an aye. Mandy Johanicky?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay. Now, in a little more appropriate and quiet order, we have already done the next, which was the bylaws for future consideration. On the council committee transition memos, Andy, do you have any comments on the finance one? The other 3 were already discussed a week ago, but finance has just become available in this packet. Andy?
I don't really have any comment other than what I wrote in the memo on behalf of the committee. we're sort of in a different place than the other committees. How we get our workload assigned to us, and we don't have any carryover items other than the general budget responsibilities that we have here. So it, the things where we're assigned to look at what is the financial consequence of something and report back, as we did with the Crest and DEI programs. Those kinds of things usually come with a deadline, and there are no carryovers.
Okay,
So,
thank you. I think it was a very helpful memo for the future council. Kathy?
Yeah, Lynn, I just have a question. You said we discussed the other committees transition, but my memory of the last one is that we had to, by a particular time, say if we wanted something taken off the carryover. And I think Dorothy did ask for two items off of the CRC. Are those off? What's the status of those?
Let me just say, Dorothy did send an email to me. I subsequently discussed that with the clerk of the council. And then I also went back and spent some time discussing it with Dorothy. There were 3 items. Let me see if I remember them correctly, okay? The first was around the definition of apartments. And the item that is left is the only one that would have been brought forward. But in fact, it's still an item that CRC has on its plate. It's not been brought forward as a final definition. And so it could be voted on as not going forward. But when I talked to Dorothy, she agreed that that was not something that needed to be on that list. Okay. The other 2 items were, and maybe Athena, you're going to have to help me just remember what they were. They actually were never brought forward as recommendations to the council for hearings by CRC and the planning board. And so therefore they don't qualify as measures not to move forward on. One of them was footnote M, and there's never been a bylaw change referred to the council for hearings by CRC and the planning board. So therefore it is not a measure that is eligible for 8.9. And the second, Athena, remind me.
It was fixing the BL.
Right.
Both footnote M and fixing the BL were directives that the council voted for the town manager to work with the planning department to bring forward zoning amendments. So those haven't been referred to CRC.
Okay. Did we lose somebody again? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
We're all here.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
I see 13. Yeah.
My screen just switched. It's because you took the clock down. Okay, so neither of those were in the category of qualifying for 8.9 because they were not active measures within CRC. And having reviewed that with Athena and then going back and talking with Dorothy about it, she and I understood that that was the case. So therefore, they are not on the motion sheet tonight.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other, and with regard to the other 3 transition memos, we did discuss those last, the 13th, I believe is when we did that. Okay. Are there any other questions about that? Okay. So appointments, we don't have any. Committee and liaison reports. Mandy Jo, anything?
The hearing that was already announced during announcements on January 10th. The meeting will start at 6:45. The public hearing is scheduled for 7 p.m.
Okay.
And it will be Zoom.
Okay. Elementary school building, Kathy?
Yeah, there'll be a meeting on January 5th, which is a Wednesday at 8 in the morning. And we will have quite a full agenda of meeting. It's going to show exactly what we're doing on every meeting through June. The designer's been working on a work plan on what has to happen to meet milestones. We'll also be getting a report on progress on the education plan, which is a required element to move this forward. So we will begin the work in earnest, and we're talking about some working groups or liaison groups on key issues for engagement, bringing the public in so they know each piece. And when we're at the point of net zero energy building, at least having a handful of knowledgeable people in town hear what's being proposed, have a discussion. So a way of vetting and being I think if it's good housekeeping, seal of approval, we're back and forth. So that's all going to be discussed on January 5th.
In the meantime, the website has gone live.
The website is up. We got some extremely good constructive criticism, and so it's being redesigned. Some elements we're putting up, but it is up, and we'll have posted, including the posting of the presentation by the designer that was before the joint two committees. There will be regular minutes of each of these meetings, including the meetings that are happening within listening sessions within the schools. This designer really believes in tracking what they're doing, and announcements on when, if there are public meetings where everyone is being invited to talk about choices we have in front of us and decision trees. Those will all be posted as well on that website.
Thank you. Finance Committee, Andy, anything?
No.
Thank you. GOL, George, anything?
Not for GOL, Lynn, but with your permission, I could give a brief account of the Jones Library Building Committee.
Please do.
Okay, so Jones Library Building Committee did meet for the first time on December 14. I did attend that meeting. No formal votes or decisions were taken. The chair and the clerk have not yet been chosen. It's pretty much a kind of get to know each other meeting. The owner's project manager was introduced, Ken Guyette, and he took the committee through the basic process and timeline. And Sean Mangano spoke briefly about the finances. And a date for the next meeting was set, January 12th at 4 o'clock. And the next day I sent my letter of resignation to the town clerk. And so the council in January will need to choose a new council liaison for that body.
Okay. Let me just mention on the draft agenda for the January 3rd meeting is in fact a selection for the one seat that is vacant on the elementary school building committee, and now the one seat that is vacant on the Jones Library Building Committee. So we will actually take nominations that night and select those people. TSO.
Just
yes.
One piece on that, just so people know, on the building committee, we're going to be meeting every other week. So just, in terms of the workload for that.
Thank you. And it's usually at 8 o'clock in the morning.
So far, unless we change that, but that's been it. It's an early morning meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Evan, did they identify besides the next, and I'm sorry, George, did they identify the next meeting, but none beyond that?
Yes, just the next meeting, January 12th, 4 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. And so TSO, Evan.
Yeah, so no formal report, but I did just want to take a minute to just, as outgoing chair of TSO, thank all of the members of TSO. The last TSO report had a paragraph at the end that I'm hoping all counselors had an opportunity to read. I know not everyone was here at the last meeting, but that noted that 4 of 5 members of TSO are not continuing. And yet in the months of November and December alone, in the 3 meetings since the election, TSO dispensed with 7 referrals, held I think 1 or 2 public hearings, and 2 public forums. It's just an incredible amount of work from folks who aren't even continuing on into the next council. And so I really want to thank the members of TSO for their work, for their effort, and for their dedication over these past 2 months. I'm really proud of what we did. Thank you.
Right. I think this is an opportune time to thank all of the chairs of our committees, Mandy, Joe, Andy, George, and Evan. You've been amazing. You have done an outstanding job of keeping it all going. And the dedication for all of you have been amazing. Darcy, you were also chair of one of those committees for a period of time. And I've seen Mandy, Joe, I guess, Steve, you were briefly chair of CRC. And TSO was chaired by Evan, by Dorsey, and...
Yeah, I think what you might be thinking of is that the original chair of OCA was Sarah.
Sarah, right. Thank you. We'll recognize that as well later. Okay. I do want to mention, just for the reparations, they have sent me something requesting that they come forward in January and ask for an extension on their timeline based on their present planning process. Are there any other liaison reports? Alyssa.
So I do have 2 quick liaison reports. And my reports are that the 2 bodies I am liaison to don't need town council liaisons next term. So we didn't have a transition memo for that said, so how was that liaison thing and what things actually still need a liaison? And obviously committees change over time too, and sometimes they need them more than they do others. So for the Board of License Commissioners, I was fortunate to serve in that role based on my 4 terms on the select board, where as a select board member, I was a keeper of the public way and a local licensing authority at the same time, whereas the Board of License Commissioners, as we talked about at recent meetings, is the local licensing authority, but not the keeper of the public way. So for that transition and for my ongoing work of improving the communication between the different bodies that work on regulating businesses, not simply for the sake of regulation or just to earn our licensing fees, but for the sake of listening to all the different types of stakeholders in our community as we shape the development our community wants. The Board of License Commissioners that the town manager put together has been an excellent group of folks who, with the exception of one former select board member, Doug Slaughter, had not in fact served in town government previously, and they leapt right in and learned a ton of information, and we've seen them interact with the town council since then, and I don't believe they need a town council liaison because town councilors are already so incredibly busy with other workloads, as we know from the committees we just spoke about. I also believe you do not need a town council liaison to the Reparation Assembly because I was very grateful to serve in that role, of course, following on my initial sponsorship of the resolution we all did a year ago. But obviously, incoming town councilor from District 1, Michelle Miller, needs to remain on that time-limited committee. This is not a conversation like we had about ECAC. It's a time-limited committee. Michelle is co-founder of Reparations for Amherst. So you will have a built-in town council liaison. And then assuming whether they get their charge extended or not, part of their plan will eventually involve some sort of successor body to that time-limited body. And then that'll have a new set of members that may or may not include voting town council members, voting town councilors as members or liaisons. So earlier when we spoke of Elementary School Building Committee and Jones Library Building Committee, those aren't liaisons. Those are actual town council members. Again, because it's a different situation than, for example, what we developed when we first developed ECAC. So I hope that you will take that under advisement as you move into January and not feel the need to assign actual town council liaisons to the AHRA or the BLC, because I believe they are well in hand and I really appreciate having been able to work with them.
And as you are aware, we do describe a process for looking at liaisons in our rules of procedure, and we will begin that process again as we form the new council. Okay, are there any other liaison reports? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to move to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Lynn. Hopefully this is your penultimate item for today. First, good news, the town has been selected as one of the communities that will be receiving the antigen rapid tests, which look like this. These are There are 2 tests in here. These are designed to be distributed to individuals and families who are facing financial hardship. Our plan is to get them out to as many people as possible this week, starting tomorrow. We will be working through the school district. We are working through the school district where about half of them, because we believe that that's the best avenue to get to families in need and all into large families. And that's the basic place. The other place that we are working with is the Survival Center, Craig's Doors. We also have some set aside for restaurants, for seniors, for family outreach of Amherst, and any other paths that we can get them into people's hands. The way these work, because some people wonder about them, is that they are self-administered. They take 15 minutes. You do a swab just like you do with a normal test, and you put some solution on it, and then it reads it in 15 minutes. It tells you if you're positive, and they're relatively accurate in the 90% range. And if you do 2 of them, it's highly reliable. But it tells you if you're infected today, and that informs you whether you should be going to the family gathering on Christmas or New Year's or wherever. And that's the point of these tests. So pleased to have that. Health director has been working with schools and fire and others to help get them into people's hands. It's an all court press to get them out so people have them in advance of the holidays. Second thing was we in your town manager report, just to note that there were a couple employees who received awards recently, which we'd like to recognize. Brianna Sunred and Bill Laramie both are being recognized by people for in Bill's case, the Western Mass Police Officer of the Year, and in Brianna's case, one of the top 25 influencers in local government for social media, which we all know that it's sort of surprising she's not number 1, but she belongs there. We also been announced that our HR department will receive an award at the MMA conference. We can't announce that. It's not public, but again, great effort by our town staff that's being recognized by others. And the last thing I'll just mention, because there's a lot in the town manager report, really happy that the Craig's Doors was able to open the warming shelter today at the VFW on Main Street. This is a shelter that will be open from 8 to 4 daily. There'll be food available, internet. It'll be a place for medical providers to go to help treat or to meet with people. It's a great opportunity for Craig's Doors. The town helped in a small way by helping to permit it and get it open, but it really was the initiative and the drive of the Craig's Doors staff to make that happen. So congrats to them for making this something that's been needed, especially with the pandemic. So just a real blessing for everyone. So have any questions or answers?
Questions of the town manager? Yes, Evan.
Yeah, so thinking about COVID and going forward, back in August, I had asked if there had been consideration by the Board of Health for a vaccine requirement for entry into certain spaces that New York City and San Francisco had imposed, and the answer at that time was no. So we heard today Mayor Michelle Wu announcing that starting January 15th, they'll require proof of vaccination for many indoor spaces in Boston. I know Salem Mayor Kim Driscoll also announced that she's recommending to her Board of Health a vaccination requirement for entry to certain indoor spaces. So I'm wondering, given the surge in cases we're seeing, giving other Massachusetts communities considering this, if this is something that is now being discussed by the Health Department and Board of Health.
So the health department isn't talking about that in particular. We are talking about vaccines for employees as a requirement. It's not something that we've negotiated or put on the table yet. In terms of physical spaces, I think what we want to do is see what happens after the first of the year. We will sort of have a dark period where we won't have a lot of information from December 23rd to January 3rd. So once we get testing back up and running in January, they'll make another review of that. The Board of Health meets on January 12th, I believe it is. And so if this is something that they'd like to consider, they would do it at that point. But I've not heard the health director say, to enter any building, you'd have to be vaccinated. It really is looking at testing and mask wearing as the 2 major tools that they have in play.
Okay. Dorothy?
I would like to urge that the strongest measures be taken now before the holiday. Things are changing very rapidly, and I am very proud of living in Amherst, in Massachusetts, in a rational state where we do things right. But things have changed at my school, which is not requiring, they will require vaccination to enter the building as of January 2nd. But I have students getting sick and being admitted to the hospitals now, and I'm having to change my finals over to online. And dealing with that, I feel that this next 2 weeks is really crucial. We have canceled all of our travel plans. And I do appreciate your telling me about taking the test twice. My home tests, of course, are backdated from Amazon. I won't get them till January 3rd, but I think that's very helpful information that I hadn't heard before. So I just hope that we do everything possible to keep the spread down here. We've done a great job so far, and I really give you a lot of credit for it. But I just want to urge you to not wait until January, to just do it now. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're all on the same page in needing to pay attention and put the things in place that we think are reasonable. We have a huge exodus from our population. Obviously, you can see it throughout the town, and the university and the colleges have been terrific in their responses. So now it's on us as the community, especially in January, to monitor and make sure that we put in place the things that we need to. To that, yeah. So I'll leave it at that.
Are there other questions of the town manager? Okay, then each of you received a package today, except for 2 counselors who are not at their home. I'm not going to get into where they are, but they're taking breaks, but they're still with us tonight. So if you would make sure you open your package and have available the glass that you were given in your package. I'll be right back.
And the glass has been sterilized, just so you know. So I'll run through the dishwasher.
So Paul, the 2 of us that aren't where we could get our glass, what shape should I be raising? Does it matter?
Whatever glass you have.
Whatever glass I have, I've got one.
So I've put together the beginnings of a 4-phase thank you. First is to the council. We'll get to that in a moment. The second begins saying thank you to the 6 counselors who are not continuing forward. The third is an opportunity and in that second one, I have already invited 2 counselors to say comments about each of the 6 counselors that are leaving, okay? The fourth is a third one is to then open it up for anybody who would like to say anything. And the last phase is to ask whether any of our 6 counselors who are leaving, if you have some parting comments, shots, whatever you want to call it, okay? So with that, please, I hope you enjoyed this. I had fun doing it, but it is my own creation. So I need Athena to allow me to share the screen. Yes. And all I have to do is find it. And then I have to convert it. Okay. So we started out in our first year. Here's our inauguration. That was over 3 years ago. Hard to imagine. Then somehow or another, we were able to have a mugshot in the town council room. It means we actually were there at one point during our years. And obviously that had to be pre-March 2020. And then finally, we were able to actually have our official portrait taken, which Paul promises me will be in the town hall. So I would like to raise a glass to the following, to the inaugural town council. Sworn in on December 2nd, 2018, we have now served 3 years and 18 days. clearly some of the most unusual, yet productive in each of our experiences. We flew the plane while building it, with the general laws of the Commonwealth, the Charter, our rules of procedure, and our own good sense about government. We have built a very sound foundation, allowing the next council to move forward with their own priorities. Whatever we're expecting when we ran and won for town council in 2018, each of us has been surprised, perhaps even stunned by the job, what the job entails, although it is not enough to scare some of us from running again. We met as 13 very different individuals, each bringing our past experiences to this opportunity. I want to say thank you to each of you for the time, energy, intelligence, and commitment you have demonstrated throughout our term. Cheers. We're not done. This was the most fun part. So this is in appreciation of the 6 counselors who are not going forward. And as I finish, whoops, going too fast. As I finish talking about the record of each of them, then I would like each of the 2 counselors who are speaking about that person to speak up. So we're going to start. We will start in reverse alphabetical order, and after a few opening sentences, the other counselors will speak. Sarah Schwartz. Sarah has been on the town council since the beginning. She was a member of Outreach, Communications, and Appointments and chair. She was on Governance, Organization, and Legislation Committee, and briefly on ECAC. Prior to that, she was on the Finance Committee of Town Meeting. She was on the Agricultural Committee Planning and vice chair of that. She was a town meeting member, and during all of this has managed the family farm. Who's speaking about Sarah?
So, I was sad when I learned that Sarah Schwartz would not be standing for re-election to the town council. She's been such an important voice of honesty and conviction during our first 3 years. As chair of OCA, she and her committee labored on the important task of creating a transparent, effective, and fair set of rules and structures for appointing townspeople to multi-member bodies, a challenging task in a small town. Sarah was also often a voice not speaking with the majority when it came to representing her constituents, working to protect Amherst's crucial agricultural lands from development, and concerned about the tax base and its relationship to rising real estate taxes. I will miss her impassioned voice speaking truth to power, and hope, because she is young, that after a much-deserved break, she will run for council again. Thank you, Sarah.
Pat.
I'm going to continue. Some of this will be repeated. Sarah, as a farmer and member of the working class here in Amherst, you brought unique experiences and a clear, refreshing voice to the deliberations of the council. Your work on the Outreach, Communications, and Appointments Committee was outstanding, challenging all of us to clarify and develop appointment processes that were fair and transparent. And when many of your initiatives failed, you kept working to support fairness and transparency. You supported important legislation that stressed worker protection in the service and construction industries, and worked on and supported resolutions that addressed the closure of a child care facility that affected Amherst families, signed on to support lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer residents, and spoke emotionally and eloquently in support of racial justice and equity initiatives. I am grateful for all of that. But what I am most grateful for is the friendship we've developed over the past 3 years. From our first road trip to Boston to speak out for driver's license for all, and to the challenging discussions we've had about people and issues, you've shown me that we are people. I'm sorry, you've shown me that who we are as people mattered more than whether we agreed or disagreed about issues. You let me into your life and offered me support and understanding when I needed it most. Thank you for all you've shared with the council and with me.
Thanks. Next, we have Steve Schreiber. So, Steve, let's get to my script. Steve, in addition to serving on the town council, was the initial chair of CRC and presently serves on the elementary school building committee. He was on the planning board prior to that, and in that capacity represented them in a number of different ways, including with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission as a planning board appointee and the agricultural committee for planning board representative. He was a town meeting member, and during his time on the town council, he's been chair of the Department of Agriculture. So,
point of order, architecture.
Architecture. I did say architecture, and then I said, I'm sorry, architecture. Thank you. Shalini.
Yes. So greetings from India, and I just feel so privileged to have worked with Steve. He was one of the first people to encourage me. He was one of the first people I met when I was just deciding whether I want to run, and it's just been, I don't know, I'm just so emotional with there's a lot going on, and it's so I just want to say thank you, Steve, for the balanced perspective you brought, and your immense institutional wisdom and memory, your professional experience, your good humor, and in fact, when I was lost in the CRC meetings, so that's how I got to learn and know and learn from Steve, was through our CRC meetings. And every time I was lost, I would say, what does Steve think about this? I want to know that. So I'm going to definitely miss your deep wisdom, your balanced perspective, your objectivity, and I'm probably going to have you on speed dial. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. Kathy?
Steve, what a pleasure it's been to get to know you, discuss views, and learn from your years of experience as an architect and past service to the town. The trip we just took to see an elementary school together enriched my own experience, because the notes you sent me, you saw things and you thought about things that didn't occur to me, and I could bounce them off my own. It spread my own views. And the times we've had a chance to talk helped me focus and understand different points of view. I really hope you're going to continue to contribute to the elementary school building project. You can build us great models in your classrooms. It's going to take a committed effort, collective effort, to move down a path to new school that meets our children's needs and does so as a model of green, net zero design that's a source of community pride for years to come. We wish you the best. I know you're stepping down because you're going on to bigger things. You have new responsibilities in the world of architecture. But we thank you for your years of service at the council, and I really want to keep you connected to the elementary school building project. It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm moving to the next one, which is in fact George Ryan. I just want to mention all of these pictures are available either on Facebook or on the World Wide Web. When I showed this picture to Athena, she could not help but just enjoy, particularly the one on the left. So George has served on the town council. During that entire time, he has been, during most of that time, he has been chair of governance, organization, and legislation. He's been on the outreach OCA committee, as well as on the Town Services and Outreach Committee, where he briefly helped us out this summer by chairing as well. George was a town meeting member, And during all of this, he has continued to be, until he retired, an adjunct faculty in humanities at Holyoke Community College and a regular volunteer at Craig's Doors. So, Pat?
George, your belief in the importance of service informs all your work. You've worked diligently and often behind the scenes to support our homeless residents, locate a potential and centrally located site for a BIPOC-led youth empowerment center, and stumbling like all of us, challenge yourself to look at assumptions you might hold about systemic racism. Publicly, you've worked with the business community by supporting the transformation of Kendrick Park, by working to increase density in the downtown, and by addressing parking issues. Your support for the development of affordable housing in Amherst has been unfailing, even when residents in your own district opposed its development in their neighborhood. Your work as chair of the Government Outreach and Legislation Committee has been organized, thoughtful, and at times playful. Your work on the Town Services and Outreach Committee and the early work you did as a member of OCA show how much you care for the community known as the town of Amherst. I don't always agree with you, but I trust you will continue to challenge me to pay real attention to counter arguments and real attention to how the effects of our decisions ripple outward, often in unanticipated ways. Thank you for our conversations, for asking me on walks through your district, introducing me to new restaurants, and for your friendship, which I deeply value. Thank you.
Andy.
I can't help but start by noting that the picture at the beginning, one of the three showed you, George, in a Red Sox hat. We both grew up in St. Louis, or in St. Louis for a substantial part of our youth, and we're Cardinal fans, converted to Red Sox fans. So I sympathize with both teams, and I root for both teams and join you with that. I really didn't get to know you until the 2016 campaign, and even though you were on town meeting, but I found you through that campaign to be somebody who is very dedicated to our community, compassionate, thoughtful, analytic in your approach, warm, generous. And since our inauguration, I think all of those traits have come through. And the one thing that I found about you is that you're a heck of a hard worker, and you have real problems saying the word no. There are three examples that I was going to give that tie together. One of them, which was mentioned already by Pat, and that was your compassion about homeless people and your work at Craig's Doors, which I think that Lynn mentioned, and that you recognize that Craig's Doors is important to our community, and that we needed a shelter that was year-round and services that were always available, and not just about a seasonal shelter. You then segued that into your support for the 132 Northampton Road project, which was not an easy decision because many of your neighbors were concerned about it, but you really worked hard to think about what their concerns were, and investigated their concerns, looked for solutions, and made trips over to Northampton to look at Valley CDC properties, and shared that with the rest of us. And I think that we all really learned from and appreciated your willingness to press ahead with that project. And the third thing is that I occasionally hear from many people about budget issues, but when I hear from you about budget issues, it's usually not questions of what is. It's I've thought about the thought, I've done a lot of research, and what do you think about these things that I've researched? You really work hard at that too, and I benefited from your efforts. And as far as the committees that I've worked on, you served on 2 committees with you. I served on in my 2nd year and TSO 3rd year as a counselor. And as GOL chair, you're always prepared and helped us to, through a process, made sure that we all had a voice and that we were all heard and that the public had a voice, was informed and heard. And your reports were all prompt, complete, and reflected the views of all members at TSO. You helped us develop the parking policy that the committee adopted and the council endorsed, and the public appreciated. And as noted, you stepped in for a very brief period of time to be chair of TSO because there was a void that was filled when Darcy had to step aside as chair and Evan was out of town and unavailable. So George, I've enjoyed working with you, and Guy, I'm going to miss you.
Evan, if you aren't shaking now, concerned about what pictures I might show, rest easy. So, Evan.
My God, look how much I've aged.
I saw a few gray hair. Evan has been on the town council with us since the beginning, obviously, and he's been vice president for this last year, and I want to thank him specifically for that. He was on the Bylaw Review Committee, the Energy and Climate Action Committee. He was vice chair of OCA and Town Services and Outreach Committee, a member, and most recently chair. He was on the Community Resources Committee as well. And during this entire time, Evan actually was promoted to senior lecturer at the university. No small achievement. With that, I'm going to ask Shalini.
Evan, so much respect, really. As a young professional with a full-time job and who's been partying so hard, it's amazing the amount of work you've done for a town, and you've been so super prepared, so meticulous. And I know every one of us in CRC has learned directly and indirectly from what you know and what you've shared and what you brought to our committee. Zoning is super complex and nuanced, and I've always said that no one knows zoning like Evan does. Maybe you can start a side consulting business where you can give us lessons on that, seriously. And just as as I think you're the only renter in our council, and being young and so passionate about our town, being committed and being an advocate for renters. I mean, you've done so much for a town, and I just hope that people will see and continue to appreciate what you've done. And you've been the vice president of our council, you've been the chair of the TSO, and you've been on OCA, and you've been on I don't know how many committees. I don't know how you do all that. And so you're going to be really missed. I think I also wanted to just say that it's so easy to criticize and find flaws in new initiatives, but it takes a lot of courage and a lot of energy and work to initiate new bylaws and new initiatives, and you did that. And I want to thank you for that. You've laid a foundation for our town, and that everyone's going to remember. You're going to be missed. I'm really going to miss you, just learning, working with you. Thank you.
Andy Joe?
Gosh, I don't know how to follow that. So yeah, you are, you're the youngest, which made me not the youngest. I'll say that. So that was nice. But you are our only renter, and those two items allowed you, and it doesn't just allow you, you were a consistent voice and always were a consistent voice for us to remember those who don't own their homes and what the struggle is in town. For those that don't own homes and the high rents and the housing need that we have. you always consistently brought up the college students, which are about half of our population, and how we need to remember that they are residents of this town too, and that they have every right to be a part of this town and this government, and that we should be considering them along with all other residents. You never left housing behind. It was always one of your primary goals, is to find a way to ease the housing burden. You stepped up when it was needed. You didn't need to be chair of PSO these last couple of months, but you stepped up and you did it when Darcy resigned, while trying to run a campaign that was taking up a ton of time. I'm always jealous of the speeches you give, because they're always so clear of what you're trying to say and the purpose you're going to do for, and you have a clear vision. It was one of the things that I admired the most of you, is, you set forth your vision every year. This is what I want to get done. This is how I'm going to do it. And then you set out to do it. So, you served with integrity, thoughtfulness. You always worked towards that vision. I think we're going to miss you, but we'll never forget you, because I can't fail to mention this. You're the one who made the motion and proposed the bylaw amendment to bring beer and wine to the common. And so your legacy will always include alcohol on the common. So in that sense, you will never be forgotten, but you brought so much more to this council than just some of that. So cheers to you. We're going to miss you.
Thank you. So next is Darcy. Darcy Dumont has joined us on the council along with the rest of us. She has been on the Energy and Climate Action Committee since its creation, Outreach and Communications, OCA. She then was on Town Services and Outreach and was chair of that for a number of months, and then on GOL. And during this time, she has been blessed by the birth of grandchildren that she helps attend to on a regular basis. So with that, I'm going to call on Dorothy.
Did I unmute myself? Yes. Okay. Most recently, I especially enjoyed Darcy's fearless leadership on the zoning moratorium, which received such wide support. But her main contribution as a town councilor is in the area of fighting climate change. When I first met Darcy, when we were running for office, I was struck by how knowledgeable she was on the subject of our imperiled planet and the need for immediate action. After applying her legal training to working with state legislatures to create structures for change, Darcy, here in Amherst, focused her energy on working with grassroots organizations, including Mothers Out Front, that felt that the fight was most effective on the local level. After her election to town council, Darcy worked with Zero Energy Task Force and helped create ECAC, Energy and Climate Action Committee, to develop the Town of Amherst Climate Action Plan. Darcy continues to work on zero waste to transform our hauling system and community choice aggregation. I hope we can look forward to Darcy's continued contribution to organizing successful climate action and renewable energy all the way. Thank you, Darcy, for your great leadership. Thank you.
Great. Kathy?
So I'll build on Dorothy's and try not to repeat, because we wrote some of the same words without ever seeing what else it did. Darcy, I don't know what I can say that begins to capture how valuable you've been as a counselor and a leader on climate action. From day one, you creatively acted to make sustainability a top priority for the council and for the town, and you worked tirelessly with others in town to move from words to action. You read every document with a lens of climate action and sustainability. In fact, you wrote that in to our goals of lens. You've spoken out even when you're in the minority, and throughout our 3 years continued to build networks beyond just the council focus on climate. So some of the pictures Lynn just showed is you're not just on the council, you're all over town working on these issues. You've been a leader on climate, a builder of collective action, and a friend. I know you will stay active on making community choice aggregation net zero and other initiatives are a reality, and you're going to work, I think, probably forever on moving Amherst off fossil fuels to renewables. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to sorely miss you, but I'm so happy that you'll have time for your family and to focus on the steps we in Amherst can take on behalf of all of our future. Thank you for your dedicated public service that goes well beyond serving on the council, and a personal note for being a friend, not just a colleague. Thank you, Darcy.
And our last, but certainly not least, is Alyssa Brewer. I really want you to get a load of that hat on the right-hand side. So, Alyssa has served the town of Amherst longer than any of us. Not only on the council for the last 3+ years, where she was chair of the Bylaw Review Committee, on the Outreach, Communications and Appointments Committee, and on Town Services and Outreach Committee, where she's presently serving as vice chair. Prior to that, she was on the select board from 2007 to 2018. And prior to that, she was on the Amherst and Amherst Pelham Regional School Committees from 2002 to 2007, where she was part of planning committees and joint capital planning, including a gang of 4. Don't ask her what that one was. She was on town meeting since 1999 up till 2018. And she has served with the Mass Municipal Association on the Fiscal Policy Committee, on the Hampshire County Select Board Association, where she was vice president for 2 years, and county designate to the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association Executive Committee. In addition to that, she has worked with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, Social Consumption Working Group, Commonwealth of Massachusetts Teachers Alcohol Task Force Licensing Process Working Group. And she continues as a member, as the membership coordinator for the Massachusetts Society of Professors. Mandy Jo?
20 years, Alyssa. I don't know how you spent 20 years on some of our biggest boards and committees and kept going, because that in and of itself, with all the public comments that come through and all the pressures and all, is something that I don't know how. I can't say enough about how much respect I have for that. Your institutional knowledge is something that we will feel a real loss for as you leave this council, because it has been a huge benefit to everyone. You are a stickler for details, naming conventions to transparency and everything, all in order to ensure that we operate transparently and that the public can find the documents they need, no matter how many months or years those documents continue on. And that is something that we will need to keep in mind going forward. You've represented Amherst, as Lynn said, at the state level through your service on the MMA committees and on task force and working groups related to cannabis and marijuana and so many other things that goes above and beyond just your service in this community to serve the entire state as a municipal leader. And you're never afraid to say tell it like it is. You'll just come out and say, this is how it is. And that is something that, as someone growing into a municipal leadership role, is tough to do. And so I respect you for being able to do that. I expect that this meeting will not be the last we hear from you. I would be shocked if it was. So I'm going to ask you to be kind to us when we mess up, be gentle to us as we move forward without your institutional knowledge, but always be yourself. Hold us to your high standards and keep the institutional knowledge you have coming to us, but also enjoy your retirement. You absolutely deserve it.
Andy.
Well, Alyssa, a lot has been said already about the amount of things that you've done for town of Amherst and about hard work and your high standards, which are standards you not only established else or tried to establish for everyone else anyway, but you lived by those standards, and I really appreciated that. And I'm going to miss serving with you on the council because we've served together in so many other capacities along the way. And having the night you announced at the end of a council meeting that you were not going to run again, I was both happy for you, but very sad for myself and for the council and for the town of Amherst, because I think that we've all really benefited from your work on all of those different bodies that Lynn mentioned at the beginning. One thing that I'll go back to for a moment is the Comprehensive Planning Committee, which you served on from 2002, I believe, until 2007, and chaired for 2004 to 2006. That was the body that recommended to the planning board the master plan. And what was most important about that is that a good planning process involved engaging the entire community in the discussion of what they envisioned the community to be. And you had more than 1,000 people from across the town who are engaged in various aspects, whether it be a time-consuming committee work or just attending sessions at the middle school on a Saturday morning where people got together and talked about what they saw as their vision for Amherst. And that engagement of the community and the large number of community members that worked on that process really was, I think, the model that you followed throughout all of your other work on the school committee and on the select board and then on the council, is always remembering that we're a big, broad community with a lot of voices and that we need to hear those voices. So you were also a pleasure to work with on the select board. I learned a lot from you on the select board. You were chair of the select board while I was a member, and through a very difficult time as the town was put into pretty much of a crisis that we had to get through with the very sudden loss of a town manager. But anyway, those of us who've had the pleasure to work with you know about your incredible history of the issues that are before us, your understanding of the legal and ethical requirements of service on the select board and the council, your insight into community expectations, your analysis of matters before us. We appreciated your attention to detail, and we also appreciated the fact that you always looked out for newspaper articles or memorandum from the from people at the university of interest and made sure that they got to our attention, because we probably would have missed at least some of them with that, but we didn't miss them because we had you. And I guess in conclusion, I'm going to have to just note that I'm now the one counselor left who also served on the select board. And I hope that the council in the next 2 years does not expect me to step up to the role of filling your shoes, because I don't think I could possibly do that. I know I couldn't possibly do that. And I'm sorry to lose you, but I wish you well. And I wish you, you've been missed because of the amount of time you devoted to the town. And I have one piece of final advice, which is you might want to change your phone number and make it an unlisted number. So thank you.
So again, I'd like to raise a glass to all 6 of you and to enjoy the enormous amount of time you presently are now about to acquire, because you cannot imagine what envy I feel at times for the 6 of you that will not be doing this Monday night, 2 weeks from now. I also want to start the next phase by saying to Alyssa, you will always be memorialized. On my hard drive is a file called Alyssa's Missives. It's all of your emails, because historically, I will need them in the future, because even if you don't write me, I'm going to say, I know Alyssa wrote me about this. And in each of those emails will be 10 to 15 and maybe even 20 links where I can go back and find the history. So if any of you would ever like to look up anything, please let me know. I have the file on Alyssa's Missives. So that opens the next phase. This is the free for all. Any counselors who would like to say anything to our counselors that are leaving, et cetera. And then we'll go to the final phase where, Alyssa, you get to speak. Dorothy.
So I just want to say something to Alyssa. Whenever you speak, particularly when I was a new counselor and I didn't quite know where people were coming from, I quickly learned it didn't matter what you said or what the issue was. I was always going to learn something that I did not know, which, as you know, was a huge amount. So you have a very special place in my history with the council. The other thing is, maybe you want to do an enlisted phone number, but I think you should get all of our cell phones so you can text us during meetings, because I will be expecting to hear your voice. I will want you to say, no, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and then tell us what really happened. So I do hope to hear the little ding on my phone during the meeting. Thank you.
Are there other comments that counselors would like to make? Shalini.
Yeah, I would say also that I was a little intimidated at first by you, Alyssa, and your comments. I was like so afraid of what you're going to say and all the mistakes I make. And over time, I just realized how much wisdom, experience, empathy, and commitment you have for our town. And I'm going to cry because I'm going to miss you. And the work we did together with Pat and you and I learned so much, and I hope the whole town, I'm sure the whole town knows the impact you've had in shaping the town and our community. So thank you.
George.
I'm still intimidated, and this is my last night. I'm glad I got through my GOL reports relatively unscathed. Alyssa, you're amazing, and you will be missed. There's no question.
Sarah.
I'm so sorry that I cannot have my picture up, but I keep losing my connection. I missed half of what Dorothy said, so I'm going to watch it again. But I wanted to thank Alyssa for when I was chair of OCA, for all of the things that she taught me. She taught me if I could believe in Santa Claus for 7 years, I could believe in myself for, at least 3 seconds. And she taught me to be strong without being too squishy. And she taught me just a lot of things about how to post meetings and how to run a meeting. And she just talked me through so much. And, I don't think I would have made it through the last 3 years with any kind of grace, or even made it if she hadn't helped me along. And I would also just like to say thank you to all the other counselors who put up with me when there was times when I had to attend to my family and I couldn't always do the work that I wanted to. And I am going to miss all of you. So, yeah.
Well, this sounds like a good time to convert to counselors who are leaving who might like to say some final words. Sarah, did you have anything else you want to add?
No, but thank you.
Okay. Steve Schreiber.
Yeah, so I tried to approach this job with as much humility as I could, but that was sort of affirmed today when we got the package from Elizabeth Warren that said, well, mine said to the Honorable Stephen Schreiber, or current resident. So that kind of, that explains it all. But it's been really an honor to be the current resident for the past 3 years. And I really, I have a list of people that I want to thank that I've never really actually had the chance to thank. And first and foremost is to all of you. So it's been a heck of a ride through this airplane that's not quite finished. And we've had a lot of storms, but we haven't crashed and we haven't eaten each other. So, good for us. I want to give a big shout out to my wife and to my daughter, who first of all enabled me to supported all of these efforts to, be a part of this inaugural town council. And I want to also thank my workmates at UMass, who also had to didn't get my full attention because so much of it was directed to the town. But in case you're watching, you have me back. I also want to give a shout out to Sarah Marshall. So Sarah was the treasurer for the campaign. I couldn't have done it without Sarah. And so she's also somebody that I can banter with and have bantered with over the last 3 years. But I also want to give Sarah a particular shout out because she's stayed involved through in many ways, but in particular through the Amherst Current blog that she's doing with Nick Raby, which I think is really bringing yet another voice to both the formal and informal media that the residents can turn to. And then to my fellow counselors who are going off, I think we should all learn how to play poker and then start a Monday Night Poker League. So we'll have the town council on in the background. So thank you again.
Okay, next. Evan.
So those of you who know me know I don't often write out things to say. I speak off the cuff, but tonight I actually did write something out. But before I read it, I just have to grab something real quick. You'll just give me 1 second. I want to go out like I came in, since I might not have another opportunity to wear it. All right, let's do this. So tonight, over 3 years following our historic inauguration in the high school auditorium and wearing most of the same outfit, I am leaving this first town council so incredibly proud of what I accomplished, but also proud of what we accomplished as a body. We have an incredible record. 3 new affordable housing developments in the pipeline, progressive zoning changes focused on housing affordability and downtown vibrancy, 2 new town departments focused on making our community more just and equitable, a renewed force of climate action, investments in downtown and our village centers, and the vote for which I'm proudest, an expanded and renovated Jones Library that will meet the needs of generations to come. As Meg Gage noted earlier today, we accomplished so much, all while setting up the structure and process of the new legislative body and while having our terms punctuated by a global pandemic. We've moved our community forward, and we have fulfilled the promise of the new charter and established the worth of a town council that voters overwhelmingly approved in March 2018. I am proud of all that we've done, and this council should be remembered for its productivity and its many, many accomplishments. But it should also be remembered for the ways that we work together to move Amherst forward. I am so thankful to all of you, my colleagues, for your work, but also for the relationships that you allowed me to build with so many of you. And I believe that through my work on the council, our community has grown into a better version of itself, but I too have grown into a better version of myself and into a better leader. And for that, I have many of you to thank. But I do want to specifically call out and recognize Alyssa Brewer, who has been a mentor to me over these past 3 years. Alyssa has provided me guidance, support, words of encouragement, and plenty of feedback. I entered this council as someone who really had no experience in elected office, not even service on town meeting, and someone with honestly very limited exposure to our local politics. And I'm leaving here a competent and accomplished counselor in large part because of Alyssa's mentorship. And I cannot offer enough gratitude to Alyssa for her mentorship over these past 3 years. I also wanted to take a moment, since this is not only the end of my term, but also my term as vice president, to thank all of you who voted to elect me vice president nearly a year ago. I often felt that as the youngest member of the council and the only renter that I did have something to prove. When I ran for council in 2018, I got a lot of skepticism about being a renter. People literally would ask me on the doors, well, if you're a renter, how do I know that you're invested in this community? I don't know if I've told anyone this, but the day after I was elected vice president, one of the first emails I received was from a community member who told me that she felt it was inappropriate for a renter to serve as vice president of the council because, quote, renters don't pay property taxes, end quote. So I worked really hard to prove my worth as a counselor and to prove that young folks and renters who are often disparaged and disregarded by our community have something to offer and something to contribute. And the recognition of being elected vice president by my colleagues was so important to me. And it's been such an honor to serve in that role for you all. So thank you for that vote of confidence. I have invested so much time and energy and effort into this work over the past 3 years. I worked so hard in this role and put everything I had into it. And I will admit that I am disappointed that I am not able to continue that work that I've invested so much of myself into. But I did want to say that I am immensely proud of what I have done as District 4 counselor. And I am even prouder of what we have done as 13 counselors in this first town council. And I am leaving this council incredibly optimistic for the future of our community. So thank you to the counselors, thank you to the public.
Okay. Next. George, you told me you didn't want to say anything. Darcy, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I just have something very short. So I guess I will say it. Being on the council has been really exciting and challenging, and I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to be able to serve. It's been great to work with valued compatriots, and for me, it has been a learning experience, both about town governance and about myself. I've learned that I'm a confirmed outside game player rather than inside. I never had really used Robert's rules before I was a counselor, much less use them proficiently, and have learned a lot about that. I've learned how difficult it is to get across the concept of the existential crisis that is climate change. Although I had some very good role models, I never did learn much about how being gracious could really help with outcomes. And I am signing off, but I just want people to know that I'll still be around working on a number of climate-related town projects, and I'll probably be looking for your support.
Great, thank you. George, anything? No? Okay. Alyssa, you're the one that asked. Kathy, I'm sorry, you're the one that asked whether you'd have an opportunity. Here it is.
I know you're going to be really disappointed that I won't speak for 12 minutes straight, but I'll try not to. Really, really hard. So I just want to touch on a couple of things. But first of all, thank you to everyone for all your kind words. That really meant a lot to me. So thank you very much. I was like, she's going to have two people speak. What on earth are they going to say? So I really, really appreciate hearing from everybody. And I do appreciate serving with all of you. It was quite an interesting ride for all of us, wasn't it? Coming at it from such very, very different perspectives and figuring out how we could work together on different things. Because that is one of the things that I think has become clear over even just the course of tonight, is that we can work together on different things. We can completely disagree on some issues, but always look for something that you can work with somebody on. It's a really, really good idea to find something you can work together on. And we certainly have enough committee opportunities to make that happen for people. Certainly some of my proudest times on council really have been not only that wonderful, delightful institutional memory and, open meeting law, but also that ability to look for leadership in other people that are not always the most obvious candidates. Some of the people who might feel a little shyer, who might feel like maybe they're not yet qualified for one reason or another. Don't just pick the same usual suspects to lead a committee. Give people the opportunity to shine, give them support, and give them that chance. Because I think it's really important, especially moving into just 2-year town council terms, to not just have the same people running things all the time and letting the other people more or less just sit there passively in some cases, rarely, of course, with this group of counselors, and letting someone else do all the work. I also want to mention something about the public, since, I'm not coming back. And that is that your job as town councilors is not to bring the public to the town council meeting, to whip up excitement, to get people to a particular town council meeting. Your job is to talk to the public all the time outside of council meetings, and then do the council's business at council meetings. Please do not turn this into, we need 3 hours of public comment because that's what Northampton does. Northampton is not a shining example on a hill. We need to represent all of Amherst, and the way we do that is we interact with them throughout the community all the time, pandemic aside. We do not just wait so that enough people write us duplicate emails 3 times a week and say they aren't heard because we don't agree with them. It's really important to reach out beyond the usual suspects and then do our town council work when we're at the table. So I'll leave that with the final challenge, is when people are saying they want things to be like they used to be. They're often referring to the retail situation we had in, 68, before some of you were born, 78, 98. Who are we leaving out when we're talking about turning back the clock or staying still? This is a community that is experiencing all kinds of growth in different ways. Things are not going to look the same as they did when people moved here 30 years ago, and that's good. And so we need to figure out how to get everybody engaged at the level they're currently comfortable being engaged at, not just expect that everybody can drop everything to do a public comment. I really hope we'll continue to figure out, as we have been working over these past 3 years so hard with staff support, with partnership from UMass and a whole bunch of other groups and people, to try and find other ways of engaging people rather than just the traditional show up for your 3 minutes, speak, and be mad afterwards. We can do better. And I know that you all are going to do a great job moving forward and welcoming the new counselors into the fold. So thank you all.
Great. Are there any other comments at this time? Seeing none, it is 10:09 and we are adjourned.